There we go. Oh, wow, I liked it better the other way. I am calling to order the meeting of the City of Salem Budget Committee for January 14, 2026. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Member Belecheks?
Present.
Member Nishioka?
I'm here.
Member Brown?
Present.
Member Manville?
Here.
Member Vera Brandel?
Present.
Member Tigan?
Present.
Member Matthews?
Here.
Member Gwen?
Here.
Member Julie Hoy?
Here.
Member Fuller?
Here.
Member Vang?
Here.
Member Nordike?
Here.
Member Varney?
Here.
Member Dixon?
Here.
Member Murray?
Here.
Member Geyer?
Here.
Vice Chair Cohen?
Present.
Chair Allen?
Here. Thank you very much. Will everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have an additions agenda that was provided earlier this afternoon. It is also at your desk this evening. May I get a motion to approve the additions agenda?
Move to approve the additions agenda.
Second.
We have a motion from Member Manville and a second from Member Dixon. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Say nay. The motion passes unanimously. So, public testimony. You have some public testimony in your packet, and I think some came today. Now, it is my understanding that those who have signed up this evening have signed up for items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, they will have public testimony at the end of the meeting. Is that everyone's understanding? Okay. So we will move on from item number 2, public testimony. We will certainly eager to hear what individuals have to say, but we'll catch that later on in the agenda. Next is the approval of the October 22nd, 2025 Budget Committee meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move the approval of the October 22nd, 2025 Budget Committee meeting minutes.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Vice Chair Cohen and a second from Member Gwen. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Now we've come to the portion of the agenda that we have all been looking forward to, and that is the election of officers. Nominations. So let me explain how this will work. We will have nominations first for the office of chair. And if there is only one nomination, then we will go ahead and we will simply vote on that nomination as a motion. If there are more than one nominations for chair, you have at your places a wonderful little ballot. It should have your name on it. Please don't take your neighbors. And there's ballot number 1, and it says chair. It's the yellow one. And again, if there are more than one nominations, you will be checking one box for the person whom you wish of the ones that were nominated. You will sign it. They will be collected. They will be counted, and we'll be told what the results were. It is my understanding that in order for anyone to be elected, they need 10 votes. So we'll just keep going through that until we get somebody with 10 votes. All right. Are there any questions on the process?
I just want to ensure that this meets our public meeting requirements, that votes be taken in public. Last time we didn't do that, and I don't know if the written record is sufficient for public meeting requirements.
We have someone who went to law school in our presence. We'll give him an opportunity to speak to that question.
Hi, Dan Atchison, City Attorney. Yes, the member is correct. We do need to make a public record of the votes, so the ballots will count as that, and they'll be reflected in the minutes. If any of the members want to know the actual vote at the meeting, you can ask, and the recorder can provide that information.
Thank you very much. Does that satisfy your question, Member Manville? All right, thank you. All right, so nominations are now open for the office of chairperson. Are there any nominations? I saw Member Dixon's hand first and then Member Manville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I nominate Russell Allen for chairman.
The chair doesn't recognize your motion. All right, we have a nomination for Russ Allen for chair. I believe Member Manville, I believe you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I nominate Member Teagan.
Okay, we have a nomination for Member Teagan. Oh, sorry, Member Nishioka.
I will second that because that was the name I was going to bring forward.
Well, since we have more than one, it's not going to be in the form of a motion. Member Matthews?
I was going to nominate Member Brown.
Member Brown. Okay. Are there other nominations? I do not see other nominations. So as I understand it, you will now take your trusty little ballot, the one that is highlighted in yellow. You will go down the ballot. You will vote for one of the three individuals who have been nominated. Those ballots will be collected by city staff and tabulated.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Member Brown.
My apologies. I do have a nomination.
Oh, go ahead.
I would like to nominate Member Dixon.
Okay. We have 4 nominations. And yes, and then please sign on the bottom of your ballot when you're completed. So Russ Allen, Member Teagan, Member Brown, Member Dixon, those are the nominations. Please vote for one.
Hi. We have tabulated the votes, and you do have a new chair. Member Paul Tigan will now be your chair of the Budget Committee. If I could please have former Chair Allen switch with new Chair Tigan. Take your nameplate when you go.
Thank you.
I think you can slide it out, maybe?
Thank you, Chair Allen, for your service.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody. We'll move on now. Nominations are now in order for the office of Vice Chairperson. Are there any nominations?
Mr. Chairman.
I see Member Manville, Nishioka, and Member Dixon.
I'd like to nominate Member Vieira Brandel.
Member Nishioka?
Yes, I'll bring forward Russ Allen's name.
And Member Dixon.
I'd like to nominate Andrew Cohen.
Okay, we have 3 nominations for Vice Chair, Member Vieira Brandel, Member Allen, and Member Cohen. Are there any other nominations? Okay, following the previous order, please indicate on your vote.
Could I please have the city attorney come to the recorder's desk? City attorney to the recorder's desk. Thank you. Oh, here we go. We are going to have a runoff election. So please choose from either current Vice Chair Andrew Cohen or member Stacy Vera Brandel. And they should be in order. We're getting new ballots out to you right now. Hello, hi. Okay, we've tallied, and we do have a new vice chair for member now Vice Chair Stacy Vera Brandel.
Okay, congratulations, member Vera Brandel, and thank you, member Allen and member Cohen, for your time as chair and vice chair in the last year. Before we move on to information items, I do want to welcome our newest member to this august committee from Ward 3, Jennifer Murray. Welcome.
Hello. Again, my name is Jennifer Murray from Ward 3. I'm excited to serve my city.
Thank you. I was going to ask if you wanted to share a little bit about your motivation for joining the committee.
Well, this is my first time on a city or county committee. I'm a newbie. I'm excited to learn. I'm excited to serve, and looking forward to learning as well.
Okay, very good. We'll move on to agenda item number 5, information items. And I would ask for Chief Financial Officer Josh Eggleston to come and review the information items for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have several information items for your consideration this evening. The first is a staff report with answers to committee questions. I do want to note there's at least one outstanding question that didn't make it into this packet that will be deferred until your next meeting in April. But we were able to answer most questions. Next is 4 financial reports, 2 for the City of Salem and 2 for the Salem Urban Renewal Agency. Those are just there for your awareness and review. We're not going to go through those at any depth. The next is a Government Finance Officers Association, GFOA, Budget Award. I'm pleased to report the second consecutive year of being awarded the Budget Award for the Distinguished Budget Presentation. 5G is a staff report regarding Council Policy C9 and the CIP policy update. If you remember back to your work in the spring, there was a motion that originated with this body that went to the Finance Committee, and then it went to the City Council actually this last Monday and was adopted. So those changes have now been made in the Council policy for the Capital Improvement Program. And then the last information item is the 5-year forecast document, which hopefully you all have a copy. And we'll be reviewing in depth 3 of those forecasts, and the rest are there for your reference. I'm happy to address any questions about the information items.
Member Dixon.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question. Josh, you mentioned that a question that wasn't answered for this time will be answered at the meeting in April. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Is it feasible when we ask questions in a meeting and the next meeting is 4 months away that we could get the answers more quickly, for example, within a month?
We can certainly provide it as a general update to the Budget Committee. We would include the official answer in the next Budget Committee agenda also.
Okay. I don't know if this requires a motion, but it certainly would be helpful to me to get the answers more quickly and have time to consider them before the budget is presented.
Sounds good. I don't think any motion is necessary.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions for the information reports? Member Manville?
See, Member Murray? Anyway, we were joking about me asking a bunch of questions, so that's a cell phone. This is number 1 of 63, yes, for those keeping count in the audience. I just have a follow-up to a question about membership in the chamber. I don't know if it was the stickers on the library have always been there about being a member of the chamber, or if the library recently joined the chamber. If you can clarify when they joined the chamber and what the process was from the library in deciding to join the chamber, who made that decision?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. We would have to come back to. I'm certain it's been up there the whole time of my tenure, 10 years with the city. So we would have to go back and see when the first expenditure happened. It would have been a previous library director, so we might not actually be able to answer the question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm curious, as this decision is made, if there's any consideration given to the fact that the chamber runs a political action committee that gives money to political candidates, and whether that raised any red flags with the city over the years.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. The city is a member of lots of different organizations that lobby for various political things. One would be the League of Oregon Cities that has several staff lobbyists, along with lots of different professional organizations that also have staff lobbyists. So it's not unique for city membership to have some form of government relation portion.
Go ahead.
Thank you. 3, right? Just a comment. I certainly agree the city should work with a variety of partners, including our business leaders and small businesses. They're critical to the city thriving. It's not that much money. I do think there's a distinction between lobbying and advocating, which we all support, and working to elect certain members, political candidates. And that's a distinction drawn pretty clearly, and I'm not sure what other memberships the city might have so well connected to PACs, and maybe there are others, but it hit me a little strange in seeing those stickers, and I guess I just walked by them for years as an advertisement for a group that has endorsed candidates that voted to cut roughly 50% of the library and has sometimes come out against library funding. And it's hard for me to walk into the library and have that be one of the very few advertisements there. So again, I certainly want to work with the chamber, but I don't feel we need to financially support them. And yeah, that's just a comment.
Other questions on the information reports from the members? I'm going to ask that we keep comments to the end of the meeting, and Member Manville, as we proceed through our questions in the future, let's stick to questions for staff when we've got staff in front of us. Member Geyer.
Thank you, Chair. Josh, just looking at the healthcare increases, I see we talked about this at our last meeting, pretty significant increase for this year for our healthcare costs. Do we expect to see that in the future?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. And our forecasted assumptions for health benefit increases are in Appendix A of the forecast document. But yes, we expect fairly significant increases. I believe we're forecasting 16% for next year, and then it goes a little bit down from there for the forecast period, but still fairly significant. And that's just to get to a fully funded level.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions on the information reports, we have another chance to talk to Josh about the 5-year forecast later in the meeting tonight. Thank you, Mr. Eggleston. Okay, so that concludes agenda item number 5, information items. We have no public hearings this evening. Next on the agenda is a training presented by our Deputy City Manager, Dan Atchison, about public meetings and public officials' ethics. Mr. Atchison, come on down.
Hi, Dan Atchison, City Attorney. I promised Josh I'd keep it to about 20 minutes tonight, and I've got about 26 slides, so I'm going to whip through some of these and slow down on a few others. But if you have questions, please just get the attention of the chair, and we can do questions as well. I want to talk to you a little bit about public meetings law. It's been a hot topic over the last year, and as well as public official ethics. And okay, so the general purpose of public meetings law is to ensure that the public body makes decisions in the public, so the public is aware of the decisions and the discussions being made. The public has to have notice of the time and the place of the meeting, and the meeting needs to be accessible to all. So that means ADA accessibility in a place where folks can gather to see the meeting. There's also additional meeting requirements recently after COVID to have electronic access to the meetings as well, and as well as participation. So who is subject to public meetings law? Essentially governing bodies of public bodies. So anyone who's a member of a governing body, such as this committee, as city council, essentially any city board or commission that requires a quorum to make decisions and reports to the city council or another governing body are all subject to public meetings laws. Staff meetings and the like that are not. We do have a few advisory boards that are advisory to staff. If the board is not advisory to another governing body, such as council, it's advisory to staff only. It's technically not subject to Oregon public meeting law, but our practice has been to require public notice and minutes and follow all the requirements for public meeting law. An example of that is the Water Wastewater Task Force. That's advisory to the Public Works Director and the City Manager. Another set of groups that are subject to public meetings law are subcommittees of governing bodies. So if the city council forms subcommittees, there are several for the city council, each of those committees are also subject to public meeting law. And so what meetings are subject to the law? It's a meeting of a governing body for which a quorum is required in order to make a decision. So if your body has to reach decisions collectively and have a quorum to do so, then that body is subject to public meetings law. It applies even if you're just gathering information, even if you're not actually making any decision. If you're just discussing an item or deliberating towards an item, it's still subject to public meetings law. Social gatherings such as the dinner we had prior to the meeting, those are not subject to public meetings law. You just need to be real careful when you're participating in those social gatherings and whatnot, that you're not talking about city business while you're there. Site visits, not something the Budget Committee has done to my knowledge, but other commissions occasionally might take a site visit to a location to get a feel for it, as long as all they're doing is walking around and looking at things and they're not discussing the issue at hand, and they're not discussing the issue, say, with an applicant or a developer or something like that, they can do a site visit. They are kind of tricky, though, so we try not to. Okay, here's the meat of the public meeting presentation for tonight, serial meetings. It's been a bugaboo for jurisdictions all around the state. So essentially, a serial meeting is a meeting of a quorum of a governing body to discuss city business. That can happen through a series of emails, a series of phone conversations, or a series of in-person discussions. If you remember the old Prel commercial from the 70s, I am really dating myself, but and they told someone and so on and so on. That's how these serial meetings can happen inadvertently a lot of times. A member of the body may speak to one other member of the body, and then all of a sudden that expands to a quorum. You've got a public meeting violation. It can happen through emails. So when we send emails to city council or other governing bodies, including this one, we try to blind copy all the members so we don't have a reply all where all of a sudden there's a public meeting violation. Now there's exceptions to these sort of serial meetings and public meeting issues where if you're talking about scheduling or non-substantive business, those are not subject to public meetings law and not subject to the serial meeting requirement. I'll show you an example, I think in the next couple of slides, of where that got the Lane County Board of Commissioners in trouble. So I think about 2011, the Lane County Board of Commissioners is a 5-person commission. Three of the commissioners were members of this thing that was called the Book Club. And the Book Club was a meeting between these 3 commissioners and constituents. The commissioners were clever enough to understand that 3 of them couldn't be in the same room together talking about county business. So their solution to that was to have 2 members in the meeting at one time. The 3rd member was literally sitting outside the door. One member would get up and leave, and the other member would come in. So they thought they got it fixed. So 3 members were never in the same meeting at the same time. Well, the 2 non-book club members of the commission discovered it, filed a complaint. It ended up going to circuit court. Circuit court determined that the 3 members who participated in these book club meetings violated public meeting law. All three of them got fairly substantial fines. They also had to pay court fees, and the county itself got fined pretty significantly. Not to be outdone, those at least a few of those three members were no longer on the Board of Commission, but they were still actively involved in county business. When a new Board of Commissions met, the city administrator or the county administrator sent an email to all the Board and Commission members saying, hey, we need to schedule a special meeting on this urgent piece of business. Well, they replied all, and some of them talked about, yeah, I can meet on Tuesday or whatever it was, but a bunch of them also responded and were talking about the substance of the issue that they were going to meet about and arguing about it. Well, the former book club member found out about it, filed a complaint, and you can guess what happened. This was more of an inadvertent violation, but it doesn't matter if you mean to do it or not, it's still a violation. And the members of the Board of Commissioners in that case also were found guilty of violating public meeting law, although in this case there weren't any fines assessed. So kind of lessons from those cases and from some of the OGC guidance that we've gotten over the past year, use of email or any other social media for that matter by a quorum of the governing body about the business of the body likely constitutes a public meeting under state law. It would be a violation if that happens in private. The participants don't even have to know that they're participating in the meeting. So what can happen is that there can be an email exchange between two members of the body that gets forwarded on to other members constituting a quorum. One of those members might not even have known their email was getting forwarded, but all of a sudden you've got a quorum that's participating privately, talking about the business of the governing body. All those members, including the ones who didn't even know about it, can be found to have violated public meeting law. Communicating with another member of the body is okay. You can talk to them about city business. That is not prohibited. You have to have a quorum of the governing body, which for this body is 10, which is a lot, right? So technically, 9 of you could get together and talk about business of the budget committee. I would not recommend doing that. And OGC has been pretty consistent about not recommending doing that, right? Or recommending not doing that. They've gotten, at one point they were at real extreme and they were saying, don't talk to anyone about anything at any time. Doesn't matter what it is, wait till you get to the meeting and have that discussion. They've mellowed that a little bit. However, you can see what the chain of events that can happen. If 9 of you were to get together and talk about budget committee business, how simple would that be for that communication to get passed on to a 10th member, and then you've got a public meeting violation. So talking to a member is okay. Talking to a couple members is probably okay. But every time you talk to a member of this body, you get one step closer to a public meeting violation. So be careful when you do it, if you do it. And if you choose not to, that's fine too. As council has dealt with over the past year, it's really tough to run a deliberative body when you don't talk to each other. The ideal is everything happens in the chamber and all the discussions happen in public, and that's great. That's the point of public meetings law. But simple conversations about, hey, what about this issue? Talking to one of your other members is natural. It's happened ever since deliberative bodies have ever existed. But the essential purpose of public meeting law is those decisions, those deliberations have to happen in public. So just be very careful about talking to other members and just recognize that if you do it, you're one step closer to violating the law. Does that make sense, even if it's unacceptable? Okay. So if you do it, don't pass on what they communicate to you to other members of the body. Admonish them not to do the same, to not pass on your comments to other members of the body. But when in doubt, your level of risk is your level of risk. You understand that every person you talk to gets you one step closer. If you don't like that level of risk, don't do it. That's the best non-advice I can give you, because I'm the city's attorney, not your attorney, and you can't rely on my advice. Sorry. You can rely on OGC's advice, and we'll talk about that in a minute. OGC, I believe in late summer, issued an FAQ specific to serial meetings. It's in your agenda materials. They answered a lot of questions that we had had, that the League of Cities have had, and other jurisdictions have had. Some of those answers kind of leave your head scratching a little bit. Other ones like, oh, okay, great, thanks, that's really clear. They have told members of council at different trainings individually on and these conversations are recorded in different forums. Can I talk to a constituent about an issue? And they're like, well, you got to be careful about that, because if you do, they might tell our members of council that it's a public meeting violation. I'm like, boy, okay, well, if I get a question from a member of the press about what to do about an issue, can I talk to the press? They said in training meetings, you shouldn't do that, because if you do, then they're going to broadcast what you said, and then you got a public meeting violation. After we complained to that, and after we talked to our local media partners and said, hey, we got to be careful about how our folks talk to you, they contacted OGEC, and OGEC said, no, that's not the rule. And I'll give them credit, because obviously folks make mistakes, especially me. And so they retracted that, and clearly in their FAQ it says, you've got carte blanche to talk to the media about city business all you want, don't worry about public meetings law. So that, if we're believing and relying on their FAQ, all of you here can talk to the media all you want about budget committee business. You can also attend meetings with other members of this body, such as a public forum, a town hall, neighborhood association meeting, things like that, and you can give your opinion at those meetings about the business of the committee. The FAQ made clear that that is not a public meeting law. There is still this concept of an intermediary, which I talked about a little bit, but say less than a quorum comes to talk to me or Krishna or Josh or someone else about an issue, and then we take that information and then we share it with other members of this body and say, hey, these 4 members said this, and all of a sudden we've got a quorum who's sharing this information. They call that an intermediary. So you can't talk to each other and have that and pass on that information, and you can't talk to us and have us pass that information on to other members constituting a quorum. I don't see a difference between that, which OGC says is clearly illegal, versus you talking to a member of the media and the media telling all the other members what you said. I also don't see a difference between that and going to a neighborhood association meeting and having those discussions, and then the neighborhood association members telling the other members of the body what you said. That said, OGC says it's fine. Sorry, am I bitter? Any questions on that? Okay, thank you. So there's also a relatively new law that requires every member of a governing body to take online public meetings law training that's approved through the OGEC. OGEC has their trainings. You can attend them virtually or you can attend them in person. They also have approved trainings for a number of other agencies like the League of Cities and other folks. So get that done during your term of office. They'll give you a certificate, just keep track of it. They keep a log of every public official who's gone through the training, but you should keep your certificate just for your own personal assurance. Okay, that's it for public meetings law. Ethics, I'm going to try to get through this fairly quickly, and if you have questions regarding ethics.
Mr. Epson, yes, can we go to Member Dixon, a question on that?
No, the training. If you're reappointed, does that become a new term of office?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So there's 3 basic areas that state ethics laws cover for public officials.
Sorry, Dan, one more question from Member Fuller. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. If you take the training as a member of one body, does that transfer to others?
I believe
once you
so.
have it, you have it.
It's just as long as if you're a public official that serves on a governing body, you have to take the training.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you have to take the training 3 times if you're on 3 different governing bodies. Okay. So state ethics law covers 3 basic areas: conflicts of interest, gifts, and use of a public office for a private purpose. There we go. Okay, so a public official, folks who are subject to state ethics law and the city's ethics code, is anyone who serves any public body. And a public body is a city, a county, the state, things like that. So city council members, members of boards and commissions, such as yourself, staff, consultants who work with the city, and most volunteers. That's regardless of whether you receive compensation for your service to the city. So the first area is conflict of interest. I'll go through the definition of a potential conflict, and then we'll talk about what an actual conflict is. But it's any action, decision, or recommendation made by the public official that could result in a financial benefit or detriment. The actual conflict of interest, there'll be a slide later on that, but basically it's the same exact definition, but instead of could result, it would result. So potential, could, it's a possibility. Actual is would, it's going to happen. And the only difference between the state law definition and our code definition is the state law definition is concentrated on financial benefits or detriments, whereas the city's definition is any benefit or detriment. And I think that's a substantial difference. So if you're making a decision that could result in a benefit to either you, your relatives, a business that you're associated with, or that your relatives are associated with, or newly added over this past year is a dependent or a person living in your household. If you're making any kind of decision like that, and it's going to have, it could or would have a benefit or detriment to them, you've got a potential benefit if it's could, and you've got an actual benefit if it's would. So for an actual conflict, members of this body are required to publicly state the nature of the conflict at your first opportunity at the meeting. And then, which means that when that agenda item comes up, you need to get the attention of the chair and say, I'm sorry, I need to make an announcement. And so you need to state the nature of the conflict. And then if it's an actual conflict, you need to recuse yourself from participating. And I recommend that you get up from your chair and go sit in the audience or stand outside until that issue's been decided. For a potential conflict, you're still required to publicly state the nature of the conflict, but you can participate. For city council purposes, there's a requirement that that members vote on issues if they're able to. We've sort of taken that conservatively and said, well, if you've got a potential conflict, technically you're allowed to participate, but in the interests of appearances of impropriety and whatnot, if you don't want to participate because you don't like the appearance of that conflict in your decision making, you can sit that one out, and I think the same rule applies here. So again, if it's an actual conflict, you have to announce and refrain from participating. If it's a potential conflict, you have to announce, but you may participate. Councilor Varney.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about how the city code is different from state, and it says any benefit or consequence, not just financial. Can you give me an example?
Sure. One example might be there's a traffic improvement going in next to property you own. It may not reduce the property value. It's maybe it's too speculative to assume that the property value is going to go down. But you're going to deal with the noise. You're going to deal with the hassle of having a busier street in front of you. That could be an example of a detriment that's not necessarily a financial one. And I appreciate the question, but it's kind of hard to call out examples until you see them, right?
Member Gwynn.
I was just curious if there's a definition somewhere of relative. Like how far down the line does that go?
I don't have that information on a slide, but there is a definition in state law. It's the usual suspects that you would think. I don't think it goes down to like the cousin, niece, nephew level, but I'll provide that information to the committee via email.
Member Manville.
Thank you. First, I just wanted to note the irony of saying a traffic improvement, and it's harming people. my past life as a transportation person. I'm curious how campaign finance donations fit into this.
Sure, and we'll talk about that a bit when we get to gifts, but essentially under state law, campaign contributions are not considered gifts, and so they're essentially exempt from state ethics law. Okay, so under SRC 12, there's some additional components that they find their counterpart in state law, but they're just worded a little bit differently. In some instances, you can't appear on behalf of the body to advocate for yourself or others in some circumstances. The next one, special favors, is more of a city employee sort of thing where you can't do special favors on behalf of others that aren't available to the general public. So, yeah, we'll move you into the front of the line. You know, we got this special thing that I'm going to give to another employee or to someone who's not a member of the public that other members of the public couldn't receive.
Member Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The whole concept of potentiality seems vague to me when it comes to conflict of interest. I'm wondering, who's the ultimate arbiter of that, and are there any limits on their discretion in deciding whether it was a potential conflict of interest or not?
The ultimate arbiter is a circuit court judge or the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court. More practically for us, the arbiter is the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. So they typically are a wonderful resource for these kinds of questions. We use them a lot. We may give them a call and ask informal questions, and they'll shoot us an email, usually pretty promptly. It's available to all public officials. You can call their phone number. You can submit a request via their website, explain the nature of the problem. They'll probably give you a call and get more information to understand what the question is. They have different forms of advice. One is just call them up on the phone and say, hey, I got this issue. Can you help me with this? And they'll walk you through it. They can also give you an informal staff opinion via email or a letter. They can also give you an opinion from their director, and Director Myers has been very proactive in writing opinions herself, much more so than in the past. And then the ultimate would be a commission, OGEC commission opinion, and you can request any of those.
I am gratified to hear that there is an appeal beyond that level. Thank you.
The last additional component is non-disclosure. That's essentially public officials are required to keep city confidential information confidential. So don't share it publicly unnecessarily, and don't use it for personal gain. And if we do provide you confidential information, we'll clearly mark it so you know what it is. Okay, so consequence of a violation, there's a potential for a civil penalty to be issued by OGEC. If your ethics violation resulted in a profit to you, that profit can be forfeited. Also the status of sanctions, such as sanctions that OGEC can impose. There is the potential for removal for office or other disciplinary action under the code. It's limited to only certain types of actions, such as interfering with contracts and whatnot. Section 62 of the charter is a wonderfully written charter section. I am joking. It applies to all elected and appointed officials, and it applies only at public hearings. At a public hearing, if there's a person participating that has given you a gift, you have a personal or family relationship, just as under the conflict of interest provisions, or they've given you certain campaign contributions for counselors, I believe it's $501 or more within the last 4 years, and for the mayor, $501 in the last 2 years. I'm sorry I don't have that information on the slide, but I think that's correct. If any of those circumstances happen where you've got a relationship with them, you work with them, they've given you a gift or a campaign contribution, you are required to disclose the existence of that relationship at the hearing. And you must recuse yourself if that fact set, that presence of a gift or relationship, creates the appearance of bias or impropriety in the mind of a reasonable person. So that is sort of an amorphous standard. It's under the law in the court, it's actually considered an objective standard, so a judge would make that decision, not necessarily a jury. But in dealing with how to determine what the standard is for a reasonable person, it's usually the community standard. And how you determine what the community standard is not really well decided. Typically, the governing body can say, we believe this is the community standard, and kind of set that standard.
Mr. Atchison, if I may ask a clarifying question. So not everything that the Budget Committee does is a public hearing. How many public hearings do we hold in our regular order? Can you remember off the top of our hands?
For the Budget Committee?
For the Budget Committee.
Josh probably has that offhand, but I'd say it's probably like 4 or 5 towards the end.
2 or 3?
See.
Josh says 2. So the fact that this is a important part of our charter, but limited in scope for the purposes of the Budget Committee.
That's correct. Just recall, though, that Section 62 applies during public hearings, but all the rest of the ethics requirements apply regardless of the setting.
Thank you.
I think that. So ethics under the state law and the city code is a personal responsibility of each public official. The city attorney's office can help guide you through the process and kind of talk to you about what the ethics rule requires, but we're prohibited from giving legal advice to you because it's your own personal responsibility. So what I can do, what I've done on a lot of occasions, is someone will come to me with an ethics question. I will help them submit an opinion to OGEC. It helps me because then I know what OGEC's thinking is on that particular subject. And you don't have to go through me if you don't want to. You can call OGEC, you can send them an email, and that's just fine. I would like to get copies of those opinions, but you're not required to provide them to me. But again, OGEC has been very helpful over the years with us. They have a database that's really poorly managed because of resources for them, but they've got tens of thousands of ethics opinions sitting in their database, just about every question you could think of. And you can access it, but you can't really search for anything, so it's kind of useless. They are able to pull stuff, and I guess just from institutional knowledge, they're like, oh yeah, I remember that opinion in 21 where we said this, and they can pull it out. So they're really usually pretty good about helping you get the information you need to make a correct decision. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Atchison, for that very important information sharing with us. Now I'd like to turn it over to our city manager, Christian Namburi, for some initial comments prior to our forecast presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. It's good to see all of you here tonight. And as we look ahead at the work in front of us, and to take a preview of what may come over the next 5 years, I want to reflect on what we have accomplished over the past 1 year, especially the work done by the Budget Committee through a very difficult and challenging fiscal year. That work was effective because of your time, your diligence, and your commitment to this community. So thank you for your service. So when we began last year's budget process, there was $13.8 million deficit for the fiscal year 26. So without any kind of action, that would have had real consequences with our services and for our community. So my focus when I was preparing the fiscal 2026 budget, it was pretty straightforward, balancing the budget, reflecting community priorities, and also preserving as many jobs and services as possible for this community. So with the passage of the levy, of course, that picture changed, and I want to thank each of you for your support and your work in passage of that levy. I very much appreciate that. So we revised the fiscal year 26 budget. We created a dedicated local option levy fund, and an oversight committee was also formed for accountability. So there was a lot of work that was done behind the scenes too to come to that point. So with all of that work, we were able to preserve our essential services like parks and recreation, library, Center 50 Plus. So the levy definitely provided certainty for the essential services. And yet, looking ahead, the forecast shows red in coming years. I don't like red. It used to be my favorite color, not anymore. Don't want to look at it. But this 5-year forecast shows what may happen if that trend continues, if the current trend continues. But also, it also gives us something very important, which is a shared awareness. So with that shared awareness of where we are at with some of the funds that are struggling, we can begin exploring options and identify those stopgap measures before they become urgent. One of the pieces that I always think about, I do not want to be where we were at back in March, April, and May of last year. So that's kind of I have that on my board, and I want to read that every day. So between now and the next time the budget committee meets, which is in April, so my focus will be working with the leadership team and continue to make adjustments to reduce that projected deficit in the coming years. So that's the goal for the next 3 months, and that will be the focus area for the leadership team. So when I look at the future challenges, we cannot solve them by doing things the same way. So we need to be looking into new approaches, innovation. We need to focus on proactive solutions. And we need strategies to prevent those cost escalations over a period of time. So that's something that we need to continue to work on, not just when it is budget time, but that has to happen throughout the year. And I'm very proud of the staff and the leadership team, because that has become part of our process every day as we kind of look into our expenses and the forecast. So we continue to look for those cost savings and the efficiencies, and also new strategies. So just a recent example of that approach has been with the Safe, Clean, and Healthy initiative. We heard clearly from our residents and businesses about the safety and cleanliness concerns in downtown and Northeast Salem. We also heard from service providers, advocates, and people with lived experiences about the needs of those living unsheltered. So with that in mind, this council supported a mid-year budget adjustment of close to $626,000 for a pilot program. I'm pretty sure you all are aware that this is a limited duration pilot program, and it focuses on areas with higher demand of police and emergency response services. It includes safety, which is expanding homeless service team from 4 days a week to 7 days a week, and clean team from 4 to 7 days a week. And then also launching a fire department community health reach model beginning next Tuesday, like January 20th. We will be reaching that program. We will be piloting that program. So what I wanted to say, so with a lot of stuff are happening and a lot going on with the city services, but the city remains committed to delivering on our promises. When I look at what are the 6 things that we will be focusing on, is we need to continue to provide quality services, operating efficiently. Fiscal responsibility is very important, and focusing on measurable impact. So we have to be focusing on what can we deliver, where we are also continuing to, monitoring that impact that we are making to the community, finding cost savings wherever possible. And to me, the most important thing, which is listening to the community and to understand what's working and what's not, and then not be hesitant to adjust our approach. In closing remarks, as we move forward, we will continue to focus on very thoughtful, targeted, measured outcome programs And the goal is to continue to invest into proactive services so that we don't spend money on the reactive services. So we just have to, I think I said this before, we need to find that balance and the sweet spot. And in order to do that, we need to continue to experiment. We need to continue to try new things. I'm looking forward for this process. Thank you for your time, care, and your service, and also the seriousness you bring to this process, which is helpful for the city and for my team to go back and continue to look at ways to improve our processes. So thank you for your contribution to that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Nambury, for your comments. I'm going to move us forward into the presentations of the 5-year forecast. Know from the agenda that we've got time for questions of staff at the end of those, and also time for committee comments. So at this point, presentations of the 5-year forecast for the transportation, utility, and general funds will begin. And as I mentioned, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions about each of these funds during this presentation. And at the end of the evening, we'll have additional time for questions about the other funds and other one-page forecasts in the document. So welcome again, CFO Eggleston. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Josh Eggleston, Chief Financial Officer, here to present on the 3 major funds. And I just want to note that that doesn't mean all the other funds aren't important. There's a lot of good information in the forecast document, and I recommend you review all of that. We're just focusing on 3 of the larger funds with the majority of our employees. As with any budgeting process, even in our personal lives, you add up all of our expenses and your income or revenue, and you forecast what the next year, or in this case, the next 5 years look like. Forecasting is a financial best practice and serves as a tool for city staff, city council, and the budget committee as we move into development of the next year's budget. The forecast does not predict the future, but it serves to display a likely outcome that can help identify and mitigate issues before they become critical. Some key concepts that are important to remember. We do display different funds separately for really important reasons. The city doesn't operate from a single pool of money. We have different buckets. And we do have restricted revenues that are legally restricted, practically restricted, based on fund and the revenue type. That does lead to where some funds are healthier than others. But that doesn't mean you can take a healthy fund and move those funds to a fund that needs some additional help. Some examples of the restricted revenues are permit fees, utility rates, 911 charges, our hotel motel tax, or benefit premiums. The budget office and city departments forecast using the latest information and assumptions. Salem is a full-service city, and that service is provided by people. As the largest operating expense, we calculate personnel costs at the individual position level with estimates for future merit increases, cost of living adjustments, PERS or public employee retirement systems, and health benefits. Many of these costs are generally outside the city's direct control and are either mandated or negotiated with collective bargaining agreements. These cost increases do apply across all city funds. On the revenue side, we model revenues using historical trends and other known information. For example, our property tax estimates are calculated using a model that looks at individual properties in Salem and new properties that were added over the previous year. You may have seen this graphic before. It serves to demonstrate how the budget and forecast fit into the larger annual cycle. It's a little different this year with the strategic plan update, but we're going to get back into that regular rhythm. You can see the forecast in the top left and where we're at in January delivering that forecast to the budget committee. Right after this point, we shift internally with budget development for departments. That comes back to this body in April. I've shown this slide for the last few years, and I think it's important to note that when we talk about a fiscal year, the one we're in, we're also looking at multiple fiscal years. So we're looking into the future, we're looking into the past. We just wrapped up our annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year 2025. But that report also appeared in 5 forecast documents, the full budget document, and then finally that annual comprehensive financial report when it's wrapped up. So each year does receive a lot of attention, a lot of diligence before it's finally finished. I'm going to pause there to see if there's any general questions before we jump into our first fund, the Transportation Services Fund. Okay, let's go. The first fund for discussion this evening is the Transportation Services Fund, which supports the operation and maintenance of the city's streets, traffic signals, and sidewalks. Additional detail for this forecast can be found beginning on page 20 of the forecast document. We're looking at year one, so if you're orienting yourself to the forecast, year one is fiscal year 2027. So we're estimating those costs with this pie chart of $24.32 million with 65 full-time equivalent employees. On this slide, the blue bar represents the revenues and the gray bar represent net expenditures. Net expenditures are the total expenditures less anticipated savings, and then the gold line represents the fund balance. The Transportation Services Fund is projected to continue a declining fund balance over the forecast period. This fund is one that we are watching closely and will require additional action for either reducing the level of service or additional revenue into the near future. The primary revenue source for this fund is State Highway Fund revenue, often referred to as gas tax, though it does include other revenue sources. For the first time, we're anticipating a slight decline of state highway revenue in the forecast period. Fuel efficiency, registration enforcement, and vehicle choices impact the revenue in this fund pretty directly. So the gas tax that flows through the state, as well as vehicle registrations, directly funds the Transportation Services Fund.
Member Varney.
Thank you. You mentioned that the State Highway Fund provides the majority of the revenue. Do you have like a percentage or something? When you say majority, how much is that?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. I'm thinking about 80%. 73%. I was a little high.
73. Okay, thank you.
And the majority of the additional revenue is actually internal transfers from the utility fund for street sweeping and utility trench patching. So the primary revenue source is the state highway revenue. I'm sure everyone is familiar. There's ongoing discussions on the state level about transportation funding, which could result in additional local funding for transportation. House Bill 3991, which was passed by the Oregon legislatures and then referred to initiative petition, and is now being considered for repeal, would have resulted in an additional $4 to $6 million annually in additional funding for Salem. A scenario displaying the impact of the transportation package is included in the forecast document. So this is an interesting time to present this forecast. We understand there's lots of discussions going on at the state level, and we think it's important to continue that discussion at the local level, which is why we're presenting it here. And I'm happy to answer any questions about transportation services or the Public Works Department is ready.
Member Manville and then Member Allen.
Thank you, Chair Josh. My recollection is about 30 jurisdictions have a local gas tax, and that's kind of been risen to the top of previous discussions in terms of how we might solve this pothole, sort of huge pothole.
I don't know the specific number, but it is a significant number of local jurisdictions that do have a gas tax, and it has been previously recommended by Revenue Task Force as a primary recommendation to sustain services. That hasn't been validated recently, either in the community or with the City Council or the Budget Committee, but it has been a consideration in the past.
Member Allen.
Thanks, Josh. You said this, I just want to confirm. The graph that we have before us, that does not include any additional state revenue.
That is correct. If you look in the forecast document, there's an additional scenario that it does include additional revenue.
Josh, I might ask from my seat, other funds we think are generally considered to be mostly people, 80%, 90%. The cost is employees. Is that true in the transportation fund as well, or is there more the stuff of fixing a street involved in this one?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So it's actually slightly more on materials and services. So services we buy or contract for, but still a significant portion, 65 employees in the fund. And I would note that it's gone back and forth some years with more city employees doing the work or more contractors doing the work. Either way, there's still people doing that work. It just might not be our employees.
Thank you. Member Manville.
Yeah, thank you. So this is one of the funds that keeps me up at night, and I'm curious what City Manager Nimburi and you are thinking in terms of timing and resolving this. Are we going to wait until the end of this legislative session and then come back? Like, the urgency is pretty closely upon us, so I'm kind of curious what the city's plan are to bend that curve.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. And I'll refer you into the forecast document. Even the scenario that includes additional state funding at a pretty significant level is still not where we'd like to be with our streets. So I think it warrants an ongoing discussion by the Budget Committee, by the City Council. And then as far as timing, it's a little complicated. We have lots of different pieces of information. Krishna, do you want to add anything?
Yeah. Thank you, Josh. So member, thank you for that question. So the one thing that we have been, we actually staff, Josh and I have been meeting to talk about what the plan is and what our strategy is. I think the first thing is to kind of wait and see with at the state level what kind of help that we are going to get on this. And then we also talked about some stopgap measures, but I don't think we are ready to come to the Budget Committee or the Council to give that plan yet. I think for the next few months, we will be closely monitoring this fund. We will also be looking at those stopgap measures, and we will be coming back to the Budget Committee and the Council with some kind of a strategy on how to address it for the next few years.
Member Nishioka.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking ahead, maybe, in the book, page 22, where we see the Transportation Fund, Table 1, lots of red, not our favorite color, and then some potential suggestions on what might be transferred. Is this something we'll be talking about later, or should we be asking questions about this now?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So we've had 2 revenue task force in the last several years. Both of them looked at options that would include transportation funding. These are some of the options that certainly would be considered. I think as the city manager mentioned, I think we want to see what the state does over the next few months before we have a more robust conversation with the Budget Committee or the City Council.
Thank you.
Member Cohen.
Thanks, Chair. Let me be clear. The state is not going to do anything about this bill. The governor is going to repeal it. It's going to take until the 27th long session for anything to happen. Reading the tea leaves, viewing the session in which the Senate president had to remove a senior chair, Democrat, from the committee to get it out of committee. Anything they do in the short session, which is 30 days, is not going to get this bill across the road. Pardon the pun. So I would not recommend we wait on the state. I guarantee you we are not going to see anything new. Guarantee you. So we are by ourselves. Now, on your the options you have on here, it says county vehicle registration fee. Has that been a discussion you've had with Marion and Polk County?
No, we haven't had that discussion with the county.
Is that something you want to have with Marion and Polk County?
I think we would need a policy discussion with the city council to see which direction they would want to go.
Member Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. CFO, on page 21, I highlighted something that I read earlier. I just need a little bit of clarification. So in the second paragraph, it reads, current funding does not adequately support structural pavement maintenance and reconstruction or adequate programs for safer pedestrian crossings, neighborhood traffic safety, bicycle safety, or sidewalks. My question in regard to that particular statement, and taking into consideration the over 24 lives we lost this past year, what kind of contingency plan are we thinking of, or just having a conversation about when it comes to that particular funding that's going to be lost? Or we can answer that in April. I don't want to wait. I just want to figure out, like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think we want to have an internal discussion before bringing back an answer.
We can see you thinking, Madam City Manager.
Thank you, Member Brown. And so to me, I mean, this is definitely a fund that we need to pay very close attention to and have a strategy on this, right? So right now, we need to be kind of internally, we have to have a conversation about what that strategy is. For me, I think you have heard me say this several times, timing is everything. So also trying to figure out at what time, what steps do we have to take at what time, right? That's kind of, so the time, we have to decide on the timeline too. So we'll come back to the Budget Committee and the Council for more discussion on this. At this point, it's extremely difficult to give a solid plan.
Right.
So that's kind of what I was thinking about. There are so many moving pieces. I come from engineering background and math background, too many variables. Then it's difficult to solve the problem, right? It gets more complicated. So I would like to reduce the number of variables there before we can sit and figure out how to solve this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Unless you have technical questions about the transportation fund as it's projected, I'd suggest we move on to the utility to keep us moving through our topics this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The utility fund supports the ongoing operation and maintenance of the utility, including treatment, storage, and delivery of drinking water to residents, businesses, and industries, collection, conveyance, and treatment of wastewater before it's returned to the Willamette River, and collection and conveyance of stormwater runoff from streets, buildings, and other hard surfaces throughout the system to reduce the risk of flooding and protect the environment. In addition, the fund supports the payment of utility revenue bonds for system infrastructure improvements, as well as annual transfers to the Capital Improvements Fund for pay-as-you-go capital projects. Additional detail for this forecast can be found beginning on page 30 of the forecast document. The city's utility fund is feeling the strain of cost escalation and the growth in operating and capital costs, but is still showing a more stable picture than other funds. The stable financial picture is largely due to consistent, moderate rate increases and the measured, constant, deliberate approach to operation, maintenance, and expansion of the utility systems. The forecast of the utility continues investment infrastructure, which averages $33.6 million annually throughout the forecast period. Continued improvements must be made to the utility at a sustainable pace, balancing rate impacts with the rehabilitation and expansion, resiliency and modernization needs of the system. Almost every year, some form of emergency impacts revenue or expenditures, and maintaining proper reserve levels allow a response without an urgent or unanticipated rate increase. In the utility for the forecast period, the rate assumption is 5% annually, and the fund pounds or savings increases from 57.33 to 65.3 million over the forecast period, and meets the 120 days of operating expenses that is in council policy, but doesn't quite meet the goal for 175 days of operating expenses. Maintaining this level of fund balance is important for our infrastructure-heavy enterprise such as the utility. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Member Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh, I'm aware that there is a substantial amount of pipe replacement that needs to be done. Is the city on target to get those pipes replaced in a reasonable period of time, like to get them up to speed and then keep replacing them within their life expectancy? How is the fund reflecting that obligation?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I'm going to defer to the Public Works Department.
Good evening, Chair Teigen, Budget Committee members, Brian Martin, Public Works Director. I think what you're referring to, Member Dixon, is a seismic evaluation we had done for resiliency. And in that report, it talked about we could need up to $2 billion if we were going to make all of our pipelines seismically resilient. While that's would be nice to have, we would not anticipate that we would spend our money that way. So that report was very high level. It looked at liquefaction zones in the city. It looked at the types of pipes in place. Excuse me. It did not look at age of pipe, really what type of leak problems we have. So when we look at how we're going to go about developing our CIP and replacing pipes, seismic resiliency is important, and it's one thing, but it's not necessarily needed for everything. One of the good aspects of that report is our pump stations, our reservoirs were in actually pretty good shape. The number on making those seismically resilient was about $30 million. So that's actually sustainable within our CIP with the number of, with the amount of money that we have. But to go and replace $2 billion worth of pipeline, just so it would all survive a seismic event, is not something that we would actually look at doing. So we look at the priorities. Pipelines can break in a seismic event. They can be repaired. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go out and make them all seismically resilient.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Of course.
What then is your targeted replacement cycle for the water pipes, and I assume this is would also apply to sewer pipes?
It applies to sewer as well.
And does this plan keep you on that cycle? Does it meet the cycle that you want to be on?
We've been allocating about $30 million a year, which is, at one time we valued our system at about $3 billion. And generally speaking, you think a component of that system should last about 75 to 100 years. If you program about 1% per year, every 100 years, in theory, you would go through that system. Okay. I think the system the value of it is much higher now than it was or what we anticipated years ago. So are we keeping up? No, I don't think we're keeping up. We're doing the best that we can. We're actually working on our master plans. So we're working on our water master plan, sewer master plan, and stormwater master plan. Those will give us more information on what we really need to be looking for going forward in the future. They're not complete yet. We anticipate them being completed within the next year. Okay. And that would help us better than say, okay, how much money do we really need?
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions while we're on buried pipe? Member Varney.
Thank you. Buried pipe, yeah, I think of West Salem. Anyway, no, my question was, just for clarification, when the City Council voted on the emergency declaration for us to help prepare for the Detroit drawdown, how did that impact the utility fund?
Yeah, excellent question. With the CIP transfers at about $30 million, we just used part of that $30 million, $8 million of it, to go towards our Detroit emergency projects. What that did, that bumped something else out. So, we hope it became our highest priority, and so that was something that we had to do. So, hopefully over time we can recover, and we have to get those master plans done so we really know where we're at. But About $30 million a year is not a bad investment. At some point in the future, our major transmission mains from Guerin Island, we're going to need to replace one because one is 90 years old, one is 70 years old. That worries us the most. And after we get these master plans put together, we may have to look at some type of bonding strategy in the future to make sure we have a resilient pipeline all the way from Guerin Island. So there's still work to be done. It's always a work in progress. We base our numbers off the best information we have at the time, and that's kind of how we're proceeding.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Martin or on the utility? Okay, thank you. Josh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving on to the general fund. The city's general fund supports the operations in the areas of public safety, planning, code enforcement, municipal court, urban development, and support services that provide a citywide benefit. As you can see on this graph, public safety funding represents the majority of funding for a total of $132.8 million. This chart displays the general fund supported departments and the corresponding expenditure budget for year 1 or fiscal year 2027 of the 5-year forecast period. Additional detail for this forecast can be found beginning on page 8 of the forecast document. The current service, this current services forecast maintains the same staffing with generally no programs being added. In the general fund, the estimated fiscal year 2027 revenue budget totals $185.5 million compared to the total forecast expenditures of $197.3 million. Property taxes make up over half of the general fund revenues at $100.9 million forecasted for fiscal year 2027. For comparison, as we just mentioned, the combined forecast police and fire budgets equals $132.8 million, $32 million more than the property tax revenues. Here's a similar display that I presented for previous funds, but for the general fund. As you can see from this graphical display, the beginning fund balance amount is shown using the gold line and continues to decline through the forecast period. I'm going to go over this in much more detail with a table here in a second, but I know some people appreciate this graph. The general fund forecast table, similar to this slide, appears in the forecast document. At the top is the beginning fund balance equivalent to a checking account or savings account. This balance is important for several reasons. The first is just a basic cash flow need. The general fund's largest revenue source is still property taxes that are received starting in November. The city needs to be able to continue to pay bills and make payroll for July, August, September, and October until property taxes are received in fiscal years 2020, 2021, 2022, and again in 2025. And this current year, the general fund cash balance actually went negative in October prior to receiving property tax receipts. The second reason is to be able to respond to the unknown or large fluctuations in expenditures or revenues. One example is the ice storm that occurred several years ago, where the city appropriated contingency funds, and it took several years to get reimbursement from FEMA. So that's one reason that we like to carry a contingency. We like to have that fund balance in place. The third is for our bond credit rating. Cash on hand is a large factor when a rating agency is evaluating the fiscal health of an entity. We currently maintain a AA2 rating from Moody's, and our bonds are very competitive, largely due to this rating. Just for highlights, when we go to sell those bonds, having that high rating saves taxpayers, on bonds that we issue, it saves taxpayers millions of dollars by reducing that cost to borrow. The second row is the estimated general fund revenues or income that the city receives. The third row is the total expenditures or the estimated budget appropriation. This is reduced by the two next lines, which represents unspent contingency. Just for past experience, you'll be really familiar with a $2.5 million number here. We're recommending, and we'll be bringing it to the to the Budget Committee in April, increasing contingency from $3 million to $3.5 million. However, we're still anticipating the spend to be $500,000, so that's why we're showing this unspent contingency at $3 million. But just to give a little more flexibility for those unknown needs that might come up. The next row is for organic savings across general fund departments for vacancies or employee turnover. We budget fully for each position. We would like for them all to be filled, but there's natural attrition that creates saving throughout the year. Just for clarity, if you look in the appendix, we're forecasting for the first 2 years a 5% savings expectation for operating departments, and then going down to 3% in the out years of the forecast. This next row is net expenditures, which is the total expenditures less that contingency and savings. And then when you subtract the net expenditures from the revenues, you get the fiscal year impact or the change in fund balance, which in these 2 years, we're projecting a slight increase. And then you can see the fund balance policy here highlighted, which is 15% of budgeted revenues. And then there in the arrows at the bottom, you can see the council policy compliance with that 15% of budgeted revenues. And just really quick on that 15% of budgeted revenues, that is a best practice. Usually it hovers around 2 months, 15%, up to 17%. If I had my ideal situation, it would be more like a range, 15 to 20%, where certain things could happen as you approach a higher fund balance. In these last several years and continuing now in a constrained fiscal environment, we're not recommending a change. But that 15% fund balance, and you can see we've been over that even for fiscal year 2026 in the current year, we still went negative in October, so it's not quite enough to meet the cash flow need. And then you can see the full forecast period here for the 5 years, fiscal year 2027 through fiscal year 2031. And the impact there. And as Krishna noted, there is some red in the forecast period. And I'm going to compare this to what we showed you in October here in a second. And I'll ask you to focus on that fiscal year 2028, that first red arrow there. So this one that we delivered in October 2025, which was a refresh of the forecast we delivered in May, just with some additional urban renewal agency funding. And if you look at fiscal year 2028, it showed a positive $5 million for policy compliance. So just going back, so the forecast changes that we'll go through in a second have shifted that positive $5 million to $500,000 below policy compliance. And before we take questions, I'm just going to walk through those changes because I think that could answer some of them, and then we'll pause for a second. Revenue changes from the May 2025 forecast to current. The largest impact is an additional $4.8 million in property tax revenue, 100% from urban renewal areas and ending collections for Mill Creek and North Gateway. Originally, we anticipated just one of the URAs ending collections next year. It's looking like both areas can end collections, so that's what we're forecasting, which represents, certainly in the history, 10% the largest current year property tax jump, which is significant, $4.8 million. And then on the right, and this looks like a small number for revenue, just under $200,000 less revenue. But this is a combination of dozens of lines of slightly increasing or slightly decreased, just combining them. But the most significant was the property tax revenue from the URAs. On the expenditure side, there are a few major contributors to the forecast result. And I don't have it on the slide. There are many other small changes for departments. We have lots of staff turnover. Some long tenured employees leave and a new employee comes on at a lower step in the plan. So those changes do contribute to it. We also have reclass processes and things like that that contribute to these cost changes. The largest increase, we've already talked about it this evening, was benefit premium increases for employees, which represented an 18% increase that went into effect in December. We're forecasting a 16% increase for next December, which contributed this large $2 million increase for benefit premiums. And just a little history there. We do our rate modeling. We consult with a professional third-party broker for insurance on this. And we were holding out hope that our experience, our return after COVID, that things would improve, and we're just not seeing that. So we're expending fund balance at a pretty significant rate. So it requires these larger increases to get our fund balance where it needs to be from an actuarial perspective. We're also expecting increases in overtime to align with current overtime levels for both police and fire. Both police and fire are seeing more staffing, so less vacancy savings, and as they're doing that, we're seeing overtime stabilizing at a higher spot than we expected. So this reflects that reality of additional overtime. Again, this is just a forecast. We're also looking at potential overtime studies for both police and fire that could impact this number also. And then an additional $1.1 million for the Safe, Healthy, and Clean Salem pilot program. You've heard a little bit about that this evening. We're proposing that continue into fiscal year 2027. Again, we'll have a better idea of that success or impact of that program prior to your meeting in April, which could contribute to your consideration here. I do want to note that we identified a technical issue yesterday where of that $1.1 million, we only included $288,000. So there's approximately $776,000 that didn't make it into the forecast just due to a technical issue. It would be a one-time impact, so when you look at the forecast, approximately $800,000 additional expenditure for fiscal year 2027.
Member Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. CFO, you just mentioned a study that we're planning to do. Can you elaborate more about this study?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So for the last year, the city's undertaken more than a year. The city's undertaken several program assessments with a third-party consultant, previously Moss Adams, now Baker Tilly. We've looked at several different areas in the city. The Finance Committee is going to be meeting here in the next couple months to move forward on the next ones. But one of those is a focus on the fire department overtime specifically. So that's what I'm referencing.
Yes, Member Brown.
So that study will be done by Baker and Tilly, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And that study will be throughout this calendar year, or would it also go into 2027?
So generally what those assess is they assess the current state and historical experience. So it wouldn't project into the future necessarily, but it would evaluate current practices and make some recommendations. And I think our city manager might have additional information.
Thank you, Josh. So Member Brown, the plan is we're still working with Baker Tilly, or actually the Finance Committee is going to meet, I think, next week. We need to define the scope for that particular assessment is. And I think we talked about this before when we are looking at the overtime, it's because of the call volume that we are receiving and the number of FTE that we have and the vacancies. The study will be focusing on what is it a good idea for us to continue to operate the same way, or are we going to reduce the dollar amount that we are spending on public safety if we have more FTE? So what is that sweet spot, right? The study, based on the Finance Committee direction, will also focus on, I would like to see some ways, some process improvements and some ways to kind of move forward to reduce that escalation of costs. Especially, I think there's something that is contributing to the overtime, and those are the needed hours. So I think I would like to have that comprehensive assessment done by Baker Tilly just to be able to move forward with the goal of reducing that escalation costs.
Yes, Member Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam City Manager. And I appreciate hearing that because I know there's always some growing concern about our general fund and how much we spend toward public safety. And so even, Mr. Chair, I think this study would put a lot of people's minds at ease so they can just see exactly, where we're spending all the additional funds. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Member Brown. Member Hoy.
Thank you, Chair. Josh, the 730,000, I think you said, that didn't make the report, does that turn 2028 green?
I apologize. It actually does the opposite. It makes it a little bit worse.
More red?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Member Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For either the city manager or Josh, I may have missed it. What's the timeline for the outside study of overtime, the third-party study?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I believe it's starting this spring and usually they take a few months to complete. But again, it'll depend on that scope of the performance assessment. So that'll be a discussion with the Finance Committee and then for staff when we're scoping that assessment.
Okay. So you don't have a forecast of the ending time yet?
Thank you.
City Manager Nambury.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Member Dixon, one of the reasons why we are waiting for that study to be done, we went live with EMS on July 1st last year. And part of it is also we need to have some data. With the EMS coming on board, we also want to see how that plays into overtime. If you don't have enough data set, the study is not complete. So we I think it was very intentional on our side to see if can we have that proper data set to make some measurable outcome with it. So that's why we are waiting. I don't know exactly when we will start and when we will end yet. I think that is a discussion for the Finance Committee. So.
Thank you.
Member Varney.
Thank you very much. My question has to deal with the previous slide, 18 on page 9. In the middle on the $1.4 million overtime cost increases, I'm a little confused about what that represents. And the reason I say that, since we're talking about overtime, is I had scribbled in my notes here from when I reviewed the materials earlier that in fiscal year 2025, our overtime was $11.1 million. Whereas the budget was $6.2 million, so we were $5 million over budget for 2025, and now in fiscal year 26, with us halfway through, we're now at $6 million with a budget of $8.2 million. So it looks like we're going to go over for fiscal 2026. So I'm just curious, what does this $1.4 million represent in this slide?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I apologize because this has to do a lot with staffing, right? So the way some of our constant staffing departments operate, so police and fire, when they always have the same shifts, someone calls out or they have a vacancy, they fill that with overtime. So the relationship, for that, you really have to look at the overall personal services budget, because often when overtime is high, there's vacancies that are contributing. So while it looks like we went over the overtime budget, we had many vacancies that we were offsetting that expense for. So taking a one-year look and saying, hey, you went over the overtime budget, without recognizing that vacancy savings, the fire department did not go over their budget last year. It's really important to make sure we have the context. So even for the current year, we're seeing better staffing. So we're seeing slightly reduced overtime, perhaps for some areas, but they're still working on it. And there's also other initiatives. You might remember we added additional patrols in the downtown and northeast, which is still continuing, which is contributing overtime to the police department. So we can bring back more information to provide a more clear picture. But that one-off question, and I struggled with it a little bit out of context. It looks like an interesting result, but when you provide the additional context with the vacancy savings, We're just fulfilling that constant staffing for police and fire.
Okay, thank you. That helps. I wasn't sure what went with what. Thanks.
Member Manfill and then Member Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Talking about vacancies, I'm flipping back to the council packet 26, page 26. It says, the city, when there's a vacant position during budget development, the city takes a conservative approach and budgets that position at the lowest step of the pay scale, at the very top of the, so I'm kind of, that it feels like conservative would be to budget it high, presuming you're having to spend someone not at the lowest level. So I was curious, like how you deal with those budgeting for those vacancies.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So while we budget at a step 1, so depending on the bargaining unit, there could be 11 steps or 6 steps or 5 steps or effectively 3, depending on the bargaining unit. We budget at that bottom step unless we have better information, unless we know that there's a recruitment in progress or something like that. But we also budget for full family benefits. So those things often offset each other. You have someone come on at a lower step, but they have a family, then we're covered. You have someone come on at a higher step, but they're a single benefit family. It often offsets. So we found it to be fairly accurate overall. Certainly you could have a different result for a single group or department, but as far as citywide, it's fairly accurate.
Member Cohen?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. CFO, does the 5-year forecast for general fund include picking up the elements of the local option levy if local option levy does not proceed to another 5 years?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. You're 2 slides ahead of me. No, it does not.
Okay.
When we start anticipating the slides, then the chair moves us on. Go ahead, Josh.
So I wanted to make sure we had some main takeaways for the general fund. And I do want to recognize the general fund financial picture is more positive than presented in previous years. While we still see some red there, it's still less urgent than it was the last few years. We have some time to respond, to resolve, to take action, to address them. So I do want to recognize the strong financial management for the budget committee and the city council to get us to this spot where we're not looking at a cliff next year. With that being said, the livability levy has provided temporary relief and it needs to be considered with the expiration of fiscal year 2030. So as Member Cohen mentioned, the general fund forecast does not show a return of services to the general fund forecast. You'd see a much bigger deficit in the last year of the forecast, but the local option levy fund result that we're going to look at here in a second does show that impact. So if you were to add those 2 together, you would see the impact of those services if they returned to the general fund. There's still a structural imbalance as property taxes are the largest revenue source. So while property taxes increase, the statutory 3% increase, we did reduce the anticipated year-over-year increase. Last year we had a 4.35% assumption. We reduced that to 4.2. Our increase last year was in the around 3%. So we're just trying to hedge that down just a little bit to address that fluctuation. But property taxes at 4.2 or 4.35 don't keep up with the increasing cost of services. So as you get further away from the positive fund balance we see today, you see that expenses exceeding revenues. And then the main takeaway, I would say, is additional revenue efficiencies and cost savings will be needed to continue to sustain the current level of service. This is a repeating message. Even last year when we were looking at the local option levy, adding it back in, this was still the reality then and it's still the reality now. And just real quick, since we've basically covered it, the local option levy fund does show a positive fund balance through the fiscal year 2030 with the revenues coming in, and then you see that sharp drop off for fiscal year 2031 as the local option levy falls off. We don't want to assume that would pass. It's certainly a policy consideration to renew that local option levy. So if you take that deficit, that 18.66 million for 2031, that would be added to the general fund balance if those services came back into the general fund. And I'll pause here for questions.
Josh, does this reflect what we learned? I felt like we learned in the last couple of weeks about the amount of compression that occurred with the local option levy and what we expected to get versus what we were actually able to get from property taxes due to compression.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. It's coming in pretty much right where we thought it would be. So the city anticipated that pretty substantial compression amount. So if you're not familiar, compression is when if there was no limitation on property taxes with the rate, you would see a larger bill. But since it's a limit of $10 per thousand of real market value, if your house is in that unique situation and our tax rate on the Marion County side is more than $10, your tax bill brings it down to that $10 limit. And local option levies go first, so they're fully compressed before it impacts our other permanent taxing rates. So compression for the local option levy fund is around $3 million, and we're seeing about $400,000 of compression for the city's general fund. So still a pretty substantial amount, but it was anticipated. It's coming in right where we modeled. I actually pulled the number. We've received $13 million so far. We're expecting to receive the other $1 million to get to that $14 million we expected for the first year over the next few months.
Thank you. Member Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh, please forgive me for being slow on this. You have your slide 15 tonight has a forecast for the general fund that is $36 million out of compliance with the council policy in 2031. And then the table that's in the 5-year forecast shows it $12 million out of balance with the fund policy on page 12 of the book.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I anticipated this confusion, and I apologize. So in this display, in this display, it represents the compliance with the, sorry about that, get to the right slide, compliance with the policy, right? So 15% of budget revenues. What it shows in that slide in the document, I apologize, is actually the fiscal year impact. So in fiscal year 2031, you see the use of $12.85 million of fund balance, which contributes to that below council policy compliance, and it happens to be in the same red arrow, so I apologize for that confusion.
Okay. So the official forecast right now is the ending fund balance in 2031 would be negative 4.51 million, and it would be 12 and change out of compliance.
Can you tell me which page?
This is page 12 of the 5-year forecast.
Yeah, so on page 12 of the 5-year forecast, if you look at the rightmost column for fiscal year 2031, and then you go to the bottom right, you'll see the ending fund balance at the same negative $4.51 million. The difference is for the arrows. If you look to the left, it shows the change in fund balance within the arrows as opposed to the council policy compliance.
Right. And I'm sorry, what I'm getting at is page 12 is your official forecast for the general fund 5 years out. And that assumes the expiration of the local option levy with no voter renewal.
Yeah, I apologize. So the general fund does not depict those services returning to the general fund. However, the local option levy fund does show the levy ending, but it doesn't. I guess the mechanism would be if we were to show it that way, I would end the forecast for the local option levy fund at fiscal year 2030 and return it to the general fund to show an increased deficit. But the general fund is all the current services that are currently here in the general fund, and the local option levy fund is all the services in the local option levy fund with no renewal of the levy.
Okay, I'll check with you after the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Member Matthews.
So obviously, I'm just looking at the local option levy fund, but with it kind of being its own entity or its own fund, does it sit in any type of growth account? I mean, obviously we wouldn't do anything volatile, but does it have like an expected interest that it should gain in the time that it's there?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So all the forecasts in the document include some assumption for interest earnings, investment earnings. For some of the funds where you show a declining fund balance, we show that declining interest as well. But certainly there is some assumption for interest earnings, usually fairly conservative because we don't know really what's going to happen.
Please go ahead.
Do you know approximately what that conservative number is?
I do not.
Okay.
Other questions of the group to Josh about the general fund? Okay, Josh. Maybe don't go far because sometimes questions come back up. But we are moving on in our agenda then. So in item 7D of the agenda, we can have more general questions of the staff on any of the funds presented or provided in the forecast document or any items not on the agenda. This is a good time to ask staff any other clarifying questions. We'll also have a floor discussion after this. Questions first, discussions later. Yes, Member Nordic.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to hear a brief update from staff regarding the local option levy, how it's going so far. How is it rolling out? How is it reflected in library services and so on? And I'm not expecting a comprehensive answer on that tonight, but that might be a great question to provide in written answer for our next budget committee presentation, if not sooner.
I guess just really briefly, as I mentioned, the revenue is coming in as expected. We held the first local option levy oversight committee in December. It went well. We have those scheduled quarterly, so we'll continue those, and I'll defer to Director Bennett on the library question.
Oh, what joy of that levy. Oh, thank you to everybody. It resulted in Sundays. It resulted in 7 days per week at one branch or another, 21 more hours, and we retained. Think of everything we were losing, and we retained. Also, a couple of highlights on that. Over 1.5 million circulated items last year, 732 programs with over 26,000 attendees, 27,000 hours on the computers, which speaks to our role in digital equity. So, oh, what joy.
All right, let's go to item 7D, opportunity for the Budget Committee to discuss any issues or concerns for other items on the agenda. Member Cohen.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a motion, but I don't want to get to that quite yet. I have a question on the EMS fund. On page 44, it says the City Council approved an internal loan of $6 million to support the startup, and EMS remains positioned to repay the internal loan. Is there a timeline for that, and is that reflected in the forecast?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So internal or interfund loans are limited to 10 years for capital expenditures and 1 year for operating expenses. So we have this loan set up as a 10-year repayment to the Building and Safety Fund. There could be an opportunity for a prepayment or to prepay that loan, but that's not built in the forecast right now. So it does show the, in the building and safety forecast, it shows the loan payments and interest, and then in the EMS fund, it shows the loan payments out.
Josh, can I ask a follow-up question, sort of in a related matter? You mentioned that the general fund balance went negative in October. I imagine we would have needed a similar transfer in order to meet our obligations. Can you talk a little bit more about that? I won't call it an incident, but incident, and just talk through, for the budget committee's sake, what does that look like in terms of problem solving on the go?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So not to get too into just local government finance and how that works. So we have a common pooled cash account. So if you look at our bank accounts, it's not the utility fund bank account, it's not the general fund bank account, it's all pooled together. And then interest earnings are allocated, investment earnings are allocated back to the fund based on the balance. So while we don't require a formalized loan or debt in the case of a fund going negative, what they do accrue is negative interest. So while they have interest earnings in other periods, for that month you might see a negative interest entry to offset the use of those other working capitals for other funds.
Okay, thank you. Member Brown.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. CFO, I'm not sure if this question is for you. Well, yeah, it'll be for the staff. So on page 12, I'm having a little struggle connecting some of the dots. So on page 12, in that last paragraph, we mentioned that the pilot program for Healthy, Safe, and Clean Salem initiative expanded to the SOS team, and it'll continue all the way until, well, it sunsets in 2027, correct?
That is correct, with the nuance of that technical mistake where we didn't get it included in fiscal year 27, yes.
Right. And so, again, just looking at SOS and the team that's helping to clean, would there be a way to come back and share with us how much money we're spending when it comes to cleaning up? And the reason I ask that is because I know we're spending quite a bit of money, and I think that would be helpful for us to know, but also for our constituents, folks in the community, because it's ongoing. And although we don't know what ODOT will contribute, I think it's good for us to know how much money we're consistently spending on trash pickup. And that may be something Mr. Zink will probably love this later on down the road. But you know what I'm saying? Just so we can know what we're spending.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to direct you to the quarterly reports, but I don't think it'll quite capture the month-to-month change. So I'll get back to you with more information that shows those costs on a month-to-month basis.
Thank you.
Member Guyer.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Dr. Brown. That was actually my exact question, too. You know, better way to show our community members, like, what happens if the transportation package from ODOT does not go through? Like, what does that look like as a city? How much more cost are we going to accrue? That kind of thing. I understand that's a totally moving target, but the best we could do, I think, any information we can give out, I think is better at this point.
Absolutely.
Okay, other comments or questions from the floor? Mr. Allen.
So this is a comment. I'm on the agenda packet 20. There's information that I was a little surprised about and perhaps a little discouraged about. And I say this with a little bit of fear and trepidation because this is absolutely no reflection on the current city manager, who I have the utmost respect for. So I'm just looking at the numbers. The first piece that I struggle with is the only, Salem compared to average of comparator cities, the only percentage that's given is off of base compensation, which is only about 85% of the total amount. Over on total compensation, there is no percentage provided yet. The Salem is above the average, where I believe that Salem is the lowest cost of living of any of the comparators. So my only concern is the message that that sends to our community when we're saying that we are in fiscal distress, as well as the message that that sends to bargaining units as we try to manage personnel costs.
Thank you, Member Allen.
Other comments from the floor, Member Brown.
Thank you. I feel like I'm using up a lot of airtime. So again, going back to that same page, page 12 at the bottom, you have in here that, that second sentence. It says, to align with fund balance, policy requirements, and reflect higher claims costs, medical insurance rates are going to go up. They'll be significantly higher through the forecast period to last year's forecast. So my question is this. We know there's a lot of hit and misses when it comes to our medical costs, and we know that that is going up. Will we have more of like a definite amount how much money we're going to spend on those medical benefits? Because that's going to be a huge number.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So, I mean, we have a pretty complex rate model that builds those benefit premiums. They're based on an actuary report that we do every several years, also based on our third-party administrator or broker for insurance when we go out for renewals that we do look at annually. A big question, I think, for everybody, and if you're in private business, you're certainly looking at it too, is what health insurance is doing.
There we go.
When we're self-insured, we pay the actual claim. So we have a third-party administrator that it goes through, but we actually pay the bills when they come to us. So it's certainly a continuing focus, I think, for the Human Resources Department as well as Finance when we're looking at those costs and exploring mitigating actions we can take to reduce those costs in the future.
Mm-hmm. May I, Mr. Chair?
Of course.
So would the city's premium go up this month? Like at what point are we going to be paying more?
So they increased 18% last month. So
Okay.
they're a month ahead of the calendar year period. And then in this forecast period, we're anticipating an additional 16% increase next December also.
That's a lot.
It is.
And have we had that discussion yet, or is that coming up in April?
So we touched on it in October when we came. You know, that was one thing that we
Right, I remember that.
forecasted, is that we were seeing increased benefit costs. That's certainly something we're looking at now, and it's certainly something we'll be being back for consideration by the Budget Committee in April.
Thank you, Mr. CFO. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Of course. Member Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think this question is for the city manager. In September, you advised the council that the city needs to have a funding source dedicated to any new program or program expansion. And I'm wondering what the status of that is. How is that going? Is it now the practice, if there is a new program or a program expansion, that the staff is designating a funding source for that?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Member Dixon. I think, yes. So what we talked about was when we are starting pilot programs, it is usually one-time funding because it's a limited duration, right? So if it has to be a sustainable program, then it has to have a dedicated fund associated with it. Otherwise, we will not be absorbing that program.
And may I follow up? So you are doing that now. If there is an ongoing program that's new or expanding, you are dedicating a funding source to that?
That's correct.
Okay. And one other question. Does that also apply to collective bargaining agreements when they increase costs?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. And may I ask one more question? Could it apply to collective bargaining agreement costs?
I think it depends on what services we are providing and which fund we are using. So I'm not sure, actually. I need to kind of talk to the staff about it and come back to you with a response.
Thank you.
Member Matthews.
Kind of going back to Member Brown's question about kind of the medical costs. Do we as the city take the full burden of the medical cost as far as the premiums on, or do we share those with employees?
There's a 5% cost share for most bargaining units, and then a fixed cost share for one bargaining unit.
Yes.
Is that fairly consistent with other municipalities?
I don't know off the top of my head. I think so, but we could certainly ask and find out.
Hold it open to the floor. Yes, Member Manville.
Is now the time for motions, or are we just in questions and comments?
Yes, if you've got a motion, now's the time to bring it.
All right.
Member Manville, I'm actually going to defer to Member Hoy, who has a comment, and then I bet your motion is going to start comment after that.
Thank you, Chair Tigan. I feel the need to step back to Member Manville's comments earlier with regard to the Salem Public Library's membership with the Salem Area Chamber of Commerce. Chamber of Commerce cares about the health and well-being of our community, so much so that they endorse the levy in support of the library, Center 50 Plus, and parks. Perhaps that decal is displayed out of gratitude, and I think it was I felt it important to say that out loud here tonight, that they've been a help to us. Everything that Gretchen listed came because the Library Foundation, the Friends of the Library, and the citizens of this community and the Chamber of Commerce came together, unified, for a greater cause. And that's the whole community. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you, Member Hoy. Member Manville, to your motion? If you have one, I think.
I do. Thank you.
Point of order, I think we have a motion that's on the agenda. I don't know if that one should be going first. Or does it, I don't know if it matters.
I think we'll probably have enough time for both, and we'll keep them going. So, Member Manville, you asked for the floor, so it's yours.
No, fair enough. I move that the Budget Committee recommend to the City Council that the Council direct City staff to develop a proposal to partner with nonprofit organizations to provide up to $270,000 in food, housing, and legal assistance to people and families in our community directly impacted by the actions of Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Member Manville and a second by Vice Chair Vera Brandel. To your motion.
Thank you. In discussing the city's emergency declaration that Councilor Nishioka brought, gratefully, a couple of months ago, Mayor Hoy and Councilors Matthews and Gwynn rightfully pointed out that saying something isn't as valuable as doing something. And Councilor Nordyke and others rightfully moved to take some actions, and I appreciate that. But it's not enough. We live in a country run by administration full of white nationalists whose core approach is to use the power of the state to exclude, intimidate, and arrest people based on the color of their skin, sometimes deporting them to torture prisons or killing those who get in their way. Now, we've heard at various council meetings about the desperate need to do something to help our neighbors impacted by ICE, about 47,000 Salem residents. There are families living in fear, afraid to go to school, to work, to the grocery store, to get medical care, and families already torn apart with a family member or more already deported. They are the people who are the backbone of our economy, doing jobs that are physically demanding, low paid, and dangerous. They're picking our food. They're providing care for our loved ones. These are the people who build the houses we live in and some of us sell for a living. This motion encourages the council to allocate a bit of funds to help out.
In a city with a $175 million general fund, an overall budget of about $730 million, is $270,000 a lot of money. It's less than $1.50 per Salem resident. It's less than the $300,000 the city is committed to subsidize a private airline. It is less than
Please let the member finish.
$300,000 the city appears eager to forego and refund to downtown businesses for parking fees, even as we subsidize parkade parking with millions of dollars. It's a small fraction of our budget overruns on overtime and other things. It's roughly equal to the $256,000 we paid out to a former city manager in severance, for which we reserved 0 services. Early on in a service, Member Matthews asked for a list of city-owned properties we might sell off. We were facing budgetary shortfalls. And according to today's packet, we have a standing offer from Arches to pay $2.5 million to buy back the land under their building. These are the folks meeting our community's #1 priority, homelessness, head on, and could use the stability of owning their land. So we could cover the cost of this 9 times over while helping our homeless service providers. In short, we can afford this, and we should spend it. President Reagan, who I quote all the time, but he once said, our nation is a nation of immigrants. More than any other country, our strength comes from our own immigrant heritage and our capacity to welcome those from other lands. We lead the world because, unique among nations, we draw our people, our strength from every country and every corner of the world. We need to be a city that protects and helps our community members impacted by ICE. We need to be a community that helps those least fortunate among us to meet their basic needs of food, housing, and legal assistance in these dark times. I urge passage of the motion.
Member Manville, for the benefit of the committee, can you reread your motion?
I move that the Budget Committee recommend the City Council direct city staff to develop a proposal to partner with nonprofit organizations to provide up to $270,000 in food, housing, and legal assistance to people and families in our community directly impacted by the actions of immigration and customs enforcement.
Okay, thank you. To the floor. Member Varney.
Thank you. Wow. I mean, I'm glad you brought the motion forward. I know it's something that we've all been thinking about. And I'm thinking I don't know where the money would come from. And the reason I say that is I think some of this is modeled on Hillsborough's. And when I look at the table we were provided in our stuff with their population of 110,000 versus our 180, their fiscal year 26 budget is $973 million, whereas ours is $764. I really struggle. I mean, we definitely are doing a lot more with less, and I really struggle with where these funds would come from. In looking at what we have versus what they have. They have a little more extra. Is there a possibility that we could look at it as more of a match if someone else could raise money and we could match some funds or something? Would you consider that?
Member Manville.
Is this a recommendation to council to work with staff? Like, I presume if there was interest that council and staff could come up with various options. They're broad strokes in a direction, but as we're just a recommender, it would be up to council to kind of make those further discussions and decisions.
Member Vang.
Thank you. Member Manval, thank you for bringing the motion to the floor. I think this is a motion that should be considered by this committee. To me, it is more of a information exploration motion, looking at and directing staff to see what we actually have and can we have our budget reflect our values. And so I look forward to supporting this motion.
Member Allen and then Member Brown.
Thank you. I'm very sympathetic to the ideas behind the motion. I am also horrified by the actions being taken at various levels of government. I support the idea and I support the concept that council take this up. I won't be supporting the motion because I don't feel from a procedural standpoint that that's the budget committee's role here at a forecast update budget committee meeting to make an unfunded request to city council, but I implore city council to have those conversations.
Thank you, Member Allen. Member Brown, then Member Fuller. Thank you, Member Fuller.
Thanks. Thank you, Member Manville, for the motion. I've spent the last couple of weeks talking to the nonprofits I think that you're speaking of that we work with, and asking them what different ways the community can help. And the single best way that the community can help, from what they've told me, is through financial support. The services that can be offered, that are held throughout the community, that are meant to support them, it's not meeting them where they're at. Right now, they're at home, they're hungry, and they're scared to leave. I was at a student council meeting this morning at North High School, and I asked them how immigration enforcement has affected their education and their school this year. And some students reported that they didn't like to come to school because they were afraid their parents might not be there when they get home. And we've heard this before. We had almost 4 meetings, maybe 3, I can't remember how many, of public testimony making a plea for this money. So there's not really much I can say beyond that. They told their own story. I don't need to tell it. But I thank you for bringing the motion forward. There's definitely a need in the community, and it's clear that this body is not ready to meet it. So I feel for that. I wish it were different, but that's how it is.
Yes, it's me, right?
It is.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Member Manville, thank you for the motion. There's a lot that you said in that motion. I can't repeat it all because it was good, so thank you. I do think that, and I'm in support of it, so I'll just say that I'm in support of it. I think one of the struggles that we have with this particular motion, and you said it, is that I think we forget that a lot of the jobs that we may not want to do are done by brown and black folks. If I'm wrong, just say, Irving, you're wrong. Because when you think about the folks in Northeast Salem, there's not a lot of wealth in Northeast Salem, and I live there. And so I think this allows us to get closer to being human, if that makes sense. And I struggle with this because I know there's going to be pushback. And I think that's the part I struggle with, because I can't figure out why there would be so much pushback when these are the folks who are doing the jobs that we don't want to do. So, but yet we don't want to help them. And in this role as a member, but also as a city councilor, when I see folks in my community, I don't have answers. I just do not have answers. And I think this is a way that we could address a lot of problems. And I'll go on record in saying this. Some of the violence that we've seen, whether it's in Portland or whether it's in Minneapolis, I think we're moments away from that being in Northeast Salem.
It's already happening.
It is, and the sad thing about that is happening is a lot of people don't know this happening. And when I was at the grocery store just 2 days ago, and again, this is someone I know that probably couldn't afford it, but they came into the grocery store, they were making sure that no one was watching them, and they grabbed like a whole stack of meat, and then they ran out the store. Now, that may not be a big thing, but it is a big thing, because when you have folks that are struggling or afraid to leave their home, or they have lost their job, this is what people do. And here's the sad thing about it. If that person gets caught, they will go to jail. But they're going to jail based upon some policies that we've put in place. And so and we are the policymakers. And so it's a very sensitive topic, and, well, not for me. It's not sensitive to me, because I know there's more that we can do. And so thank you for the motion. I do look forward to having a greater conversation with the council, because wherever we can find the funds, I think we got to find the money. We got to find a way to figure out how we can do this. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Of course. Further discussion on the motion. Yes. Member Cohen.
Thank you, Chair. I have some questions about the mechanics of this that would help me better understand it. Who would run this? Are we expecting overtime for city staff, an inclusion of a new SAR? Who's going to be the nonprofit that takes the lead? What is the time period for this? Is it indefinitely? Is it as long as President Trump is the president? Assuming this is general fund, how will we monitor both dispersing funds to nonprofits and then to other people? How can we validate, verify that those people that are actually in need, how will the nonprofit be transparent in the process? What levels of accountability will there be for the funding, for the supplies? What type of housing, what type of legal assistance? Is this anything that's going to fall back on us and make us liable for something, a lawsuit from the federal government? These are some of the questions that I have, and I don't know if I can support this because I feel like it's poking the bear in the eye. I do agree that there needs to be more that needs to be done. Yet I feel like this isn't the avenue that I would approach it through.
Maker of the motion, do you want to try and address any of the questions, or as a conceptual matter?
Yeah, there have been jurisdictions that have gone before us on this sort of stuff and have figured this sort of stuff out. But that's why we have a professional staff and why we're at the general level of saying, hey, staff, figure this out and bring it back to us. In Hillsborough, for example, they invite nonprofits to apply for up to $40,000 for meeting various needs in terms of food and legal services and rent assistance, that sort of thing. So yeah, like all city contracts, there are accountability measures and all sorts of other measures that the staff could transfer over quite easily. And I don't quite understand the poking the bear in the eye reference. If you want to clarify that, this feels like it's a hand up to our neighbors, not trying to attack anyone. But if you want to, yeah. So if I could speak more to that, but I'm not quite sure I understood that point.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Member
I have
Dixon.
a couple of questions.
Yes, please.
Evan, what's the basis for the dollar figure that you're using?
As somebody who tries to talk about budget things with random people on the street, $1.50 for a resident felt like a pretty round number. There'd been a lot of discussion around 300,000. I know that we're not super flush, so it's near that.
And it's also kind of comparable to some other city expenses that we took on without any way of funding them, or city decreases in revenue that we just said we want to do this because we support it. So those are ballpark figures and ballpark reasons. There's no perfect number, as there never is in these budgets.
Okay, $1.50 per resident, basically. And I have one follow-up.
Member Dixon.
Do you have a sense of how much of the problem this funding would address?
Thank you, Member Dixon. I don't, to be fair. I think that some families need $500. Some people need less than that. Some people need more than that. Some are more directed and some are less directed. So, yeah, that's something that hopefully city staff could look into with the other jurisdictions that are doing this sort of stuff and get a sense of how much bang for the buck they can get.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Manville. Member Nishioka, and then Member Varney.
Thank you, Chair. And Member Manville, thank you for bringing the motion forward. It's a discussion that is important to have. When we did the declaration of emergency for the citizens that were being affected, for all of us, the community, I found out that we once had a social fund or a fund that would support something of this nature. I think, I don't know if Josh is here, maybe it was in 2018 or 19 that this fund, because the city couldn't balance their budget, was removed from being held for that and utilized within whatever, probably general fund it was needed. What I'm trying to get at is, if that was once here, do we already have something in place about how money would be used, how it would be coordinated? That is some of the things that you're sort of directing it to. So I'm just wondering if we have a little bit of information that could help.
Yeah, appreciate the question. To the first part about the funding, the city used to appropriate about $400,000 annually for social service funding. A few years ago, before we did staff reductions, that was included as part of the list, actually along with staff reductions, and it hasn't been added back. And I'll let Director Rutherford address your other piece of question.
Good evening. I'm Kristen Rutherford, Director of Community Planning and Development. The fund that you are referring to used to be administered by the Urban Development Department and by the same group that works on our CDBG and home programs, our federal programs. So that program, the $400,000, was used to fund social services in the community. At the time that we were administering this, we had a standing committee that reviewed and processed all of those grant applications. So we've since changed this to, at the time that we do review cycles for CDBG, to bring in a much smaller group. We no longer have the standing committee. But we could, reconvene kind of the standing group, or we could do a periodic ad hoc group. We could also bring back the, past criteria that we used in evaluating those different grant applications.
Thank you. I'm assuming follow-up to this, Member Nordyke, then Member Dixon.
You assume correctly. Thank you, Director Rutherford. Many years ago, before I joined City Council, I served on the City of Salem Social Services Advisory Board. That's the one you're talking about.
Yes, it is.
And so, as a former member of that board, I can assure you we had very robust vetting processes. And I think a friendly amendment to the motion, which I'm not bringing at the moment because I'm thinking my way through it. Thank you, Councilor Nishioka. This was years and years ago. I think amending the motion to bring back the Social Services Fund would encompass the motion that Member Manville has brought. But as I recall from the Social Services Advisory Board, we always had this much need and this much money. And that Social Service Advisory Board would receive stacks and stacks of applications from a who's who of outstanding nonprofits in the community. It was exhausting work because it's like, do we fund domestic violence survivors or do we fund a food pantry? It was very humbling work because there were so many people in need. And I think there are even more people in need now. We didn't have the affordability and housing crisis back then like we do now. We didn't have what's happening to our Latino population, terrifying them. And the testimony from last year, especially from the school children who came and talked to us, really resonated with me. So I want to listen more, but I think what I might do is make a motion to amend to bring back the Social Services Fund in the amount of $400,000. And I think that that needs some vetting. I don't think we can just create it like that tonight. I think Member Cohen has great questions on making sure that the funds are transparently used. I'm sure Member Manville's not opposed to making sure that the money reaches the people who are affected most. So I think that procedurally, I would prefer that we make a motion to direct staff to come back to us with a social services advisory proposal, fully intending to include your original intention, Member Manville, but I think that if we put a little bit of process into this and give our additional members, especially those who might be more skeptical of this proposal, give them some more time to think about it, we can come back and discuss that further. But I think we want to make sure that this money is spent appropriately, that it is spent wisely, and most of all, transparently. The thing I will also add about the Social Services Advisory Board, all of the meetings were open to the public, and I am a big fan of public oversight of our money. And we had members who were a part of that committee. They were volunteer community members like me, people who wanted to give back and do the right thing. Every decision was hard because, again, the need was like this and the amount was like this. But at the end of the day, we gave the funding to the nonprofits that scored the highest in terms of proving they had the infrastructure to do what they said they would do. They had the staff needed to do what they wanted to do, and that they would be successful. As someone who runs a nonprofit, it is important to not throw money at a problem. So I really urge us to be very thoughtful. If we go down this path, let's make sure the money reaches the intended source.
Thank you, Member Nordyke. I'm going to direct us towards coming to a vote on this. We still have other business this evening. Member Dixon.
This is important to my vote, Mr. Chairman. I'd like for somebody to read me the resolution that the council passed regarding immigration, the recent resolution. I'd like to know what it said.
I will just say in response to that the resolution is pages in duration. So I don't know that we have it.
Can somebody summarize it for me?
Yes, I think we can have a member of staff do that. As they collect it, we'll continue the conversation on the motion. Member Hoy.
Thank you, Chair Teigen. I have been in communication with Hillsborough's mayor since this whole situation began. And I think it's just important to note that Hillsborough had an existing fund for this kind of a situation with $200,000 in it to start. And I think within a couple of days it was gone. And they're in a position financially to come up with more, so they're going to figure out how to do that. It's striking to me that we have spent 2 hours this evening looking at a budget that definitely looks better than it did last year, but does not look great. And we have a lot of work to do. And I'm grateful that we can look at things on a monthly basis rather than that once-a-year dump that was happening before. So we have to keep a really close eye on how we're spending, and that's critical to Salem's long-term sustainability and health. The situation that is happening in our nation and in our community is extremely difficult and complex, and there is very little we can do to change it. That declaration of emergency did nothing to change what is happening on our streets. And that is an incredibly painful thing to accept. There are people, wow.
Please maintain order.
I know people who have began to walk alongside folks and help them in very personal ways to survive this difficulty, and that's working. That's working for them. And my hope is that everyone who is in need would have someone to come alongside them and comfort them and give them hope and direction and legal assistance, whatever it takes. We are just not, in my opinion, from where I stand and what I see in this budget, not in a position to begin any new funds. We have to get our own house in order so we can be healthy enough to help this entire community.
Thank you, Member Hoy. Member Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It goes back to the motion. So if there used to be a fund, I'm okay with restarting the fund, and this may be something, Director, that you can speak to. First off, would people be able to give into the fund? You know, like, would they be able to write a check, say, hey, I want this to go into this fund? So that's my first question. Will people be able to do that? Because I want to write a check, for starters. So there's that. The second thing is, with this particular fund, I want to be sure that the money goes to the folks that are in the need of it. Meaning, we have to have set parameters for it, because if a family is being impacted by ICE, I think that family should be front of the line privileges. And so now here's my last part. Wouldn't it be great with this particular fund that we could still have some support from the chamber, our business community? And I'll tell you why I say that. Because the chamber has a lot of influence, A, and B, the chamber is comprised of a lot of business owners, and if you talk to them, they'll tell you that a lot of their employees live where? They'll tell you they live in Northeast Salem. So my thing is, this is a great opportunity for us to increase the partnership. I know this is something that Councilor Nordyke said all the while about the business community. So it would be good for them to be a part of the discussion also, because it was the business community, if I'm not mistaken, that did help us get the other 2 police officers, right? For the HST. So part of me says we could still maintain that partnership, but it wouldn't be us and them, but kind of bringing us together. At least that's where I'm going with it. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member Varney.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you for all the comments and about the Social Services Fund and what you provided, Councilor Brown and everybody. I'm sorry if I kind of came out of the gate cold. My one of the things that I do and don't do well is I immediately jump into wanting to solve a problem rather than thinking about it. So that was the reason for my original comments. I'm supportive of the motion. One of the reasons is when we voted for the emergency declaration on council, I remember one of the comments that really stands out to me is it doesn't go far enough, and I agree with that. And then I think of discussions we've had tonight where we can't take on an initiative without having a dedicated funding source, and we've already had that conversation tonight. So I'm really supportive of looking at options. How could we make this work? When will we start seeing money from the urban renewal areas that are closing? I mean, you know, maybe there are other revenue sources. I just wanted to say I'm supportive of looking into this in more detail because I really feel it's important that we do something if we can find a way to do it.
Thank you, Member Varney. I'll take
privilege as the chair and read portions of the resolution that are applicable to this.
Thank you.
Without reading it in its entirety. The title of the resolution is a resolution of the City of Salem recognizing that a state of emergency exists within the community due to the impacts of federal immigration enforcement actions and setting forth actions the city should take to address such impacts. There are a number of whereas statements which set up the justification. I'm going to skip all the way to page 3 where it says, now therefore the City of Salem resolves as follows. And down to section 5, where we resources committed and actions initiated by the city shall include installation of signage of non-public spaces. The section is coordination with community partners, including immigrant rights advocates, legal services providers, educational institutions, local business owners, neighborhood leaders, and faith leaders to support programs for communication, outreach, and community support to address the emergency impacts of federal immigration enforcement. The first word in that section was coordination. The next one is consideration. Consider implementation of legally defensible programs, policies, and resources that protect and support employees and the community in the face of harm and terror caused by ISIS action. There are many other parts to that. In my quick distillation, those are the ones that are directly related.
And based on what's in the resolution, I think I would be inclined to support this. I think having a resolution is nice, but if you don't put money behind it, it's worthless. So I will support it.
And that last one, I was reading it faster, said consider implementation of legally defensible programs, policies, and resources. So it's left to the reader to determine what resources mean. Member Nordyke.
Sure. I would like to propose an alternate motion to direct city staff to reestablish the Social Services Fund to include funds to support our vulnerable members of the community, including housing insecurity, food insecurity, and those impacted by immigration.
I'll second that.
Oh, you beat me to it.
Okay, as a point of order, and I might ask our city attorney to assist in this, this is an alternate motion, so I believe if the body were to pass it, it would supplant the motion that's already been seconded.
Technically, it's a substitute motion, but your procedure there is correct. So if this motion passes, the other motion doesn't need to be voted on.
Okay, thank you. To your motion.
Thank you so much. So I'm responding to what I'm hearing from my community here tonight, what I'm hearing from my peers, and I had often wondered what had happened to the Social Services Advisory Fund that disappeared before I joined council. And so what this motion would address the concerns that Member Cohen has raised about transparency, about ensuring that the most appropriate nonprofits are selected through an objective vetting process to ensure that if you want money to reach those who are absolutely terrified and affected by ICE, this is how we ensure that that money is spent wisely. And I think moving to reestablish that fund, having served on that board, I am confident in that vetting process. I am confident in how hard the members of that committee worked to ensure that funding is spent wisely, because there are lots of nonprofits that might want to step forward and raise their hand and say, we can do it. But in these times, it's really important to ensure that you have the right resources for it. By reestablishing the Social Services Fund, it would recognize the ability to give the funding that you want, but I think that it would be nice to have that flexibility moving forward, because just last year, the council voted to give $20,000 to the Marion Polk Food Share. And so having that small pot of fund to be flexible and to respond to our communities in need will be useful moving forward. We know that domestic violence is a perennial issue. Housing challenges are perennial issues. So directing staff to come back with what that framework would look like would allow this committee to take a look at it and make sure that we're doing things in a transparent way. But I feel like I'm doing my best to respond to what you're saying and to really follow up on the work that we started last year. Candidly, I didn't feel there was support at the time for adding money to the state of emergency declaration. I sense the tone and sentiment is different now.
Member Brown.
You're calling my name a lot tonight, huh? Thank you, Member Nordite. Again, in support of it. This goes beyond just the Hispanic community. Because, and I want to get through this. I want to get through this because this is the emotional place where I can crack. I could be picked up. It's brown and black folks, but then last time I checked, white folks also. So it's one of those things to where, and nothing I'm saying right now is a lie. It's all true. Brown and black folks are being stopped. I mean, we have a huge Somali population, so I can imagine what they're thinking, but it's all of us. And that's the part that I struggle with, because it's not just them and they, but any of us. Because if I can be stopped and picked up and then shipped wherever, and let's say that, let's say Member Matthews is with me, because we hang out a lot, and all of a sudden he wants to interfere, now he's in trouble. You see what I'm saying? And so part of me says, and I know people are not going to like this, but at the end of the day, yes, it is about race, but at the same time, it's about being human. And so you have to find a way to live in that tension, right? And Member Cohen, to your comment, yeah, poke the bear, poke the lion, poke anybody you want. Because at the end of the day, some of us are feeling this in our bodies. And we're carrying around the stress and anxiety and worry because we don't know if we're going to make it home. And so I'm very supportive of it. So I just say thank you for bringing it. Thank you also, Member Manifold.
Member Varney, and then Member Gwynn.
Thank you. Just for a clarification, it sounded like you intended for this to come back to this body, but we're not meeting until April. So I was wondering, is it instead forwarding it on to council or what? Okay.
Councilor Burney, that's a great point. Sorry, Mr. Chair, already.
Yes.
I think it makes more sense for it to come back to council, because then we can act on it much sooner. We shouldn't be waiting that long. You're absolutely right. I'm thinking on the fly here. I appreciate your clarification. So the motion would be to direct staff to reestablish a social services fund in the amount of $400,000 and bring it back to Salem City Council for consideration at its earliest possible opportunity.
Member Gwynn.
So we all know that, yes, the folks impacted by ICE are suffering. We also have a lot of other people in our community that are suffering from food insecurity and homelessness and fear of losing their home. So I just want to make sure if we reinstate this social services fund, that it's available to all in need and not only, and don't get me wrong, I understand the whys, but I also know that there's a lot of folks that are hurting right now.
Would you like to clarify?
Sure. I stated earlier that it would be, the social services fund would be to support vulnerable communities. So yes, that's not limited to persons affected by ICE. As I said, housing insecurity, food insecurity, there are a lot of needs, and having that vetting process, having a scoring process ensures that we have oversight and make sure that folks who need it are assessed appropriately.
I see Member Matthews and then Member Brown.
I love the idea of the fund. I didn't even know we had it previously. I love the idea of broadening it out to a larger section. That said, I didn't hear any funds tonight that sounded like they were structurally sound. And I think we as a city, I think every one of us have heard this before, we've stepped into social service spaces in the past. That's been a role that the city doesn't traditionally take on, but we have in the past, and because we didn't feel like it was being handled other places. We aren't in a position right now to afford that in my mind. In the past, we had $10 million come into the community that we were able to distribute out to kind of afford some of those things. We don't have $10 million coming into the community right now to be able to afford that. And so for me, I think looking at the structural deficit that we have in every one of our funds, us breaking into the social services game again, the nonprofit game, feels to me like it's not a place we can afford to be in, and we should leave it with the nonprofits right now.
Member Vang.
Thank you. Member Nordyke, I just, going to your substitute motion, and I just want to kind of orient myself. So, and Member Manvel. So, Member Manvel, you brought up your motion to specifically address the City Council's emergency declaration and provide some sort of funding for that. That accurate? Okay. And then Member Nordyke, you are proposing to expand it to a much more broader city-wide programming in the social service advisory. Is that right? I just want to make sure I'm like tracking both motions.
Yeah, so because it's an alternate motion, it's completely disconnected from the first one in the sense that my motion is not tied to a state of emergency declaration. We didn't need a state of emergency to have a social services advisory fund in the past. We don't need it now. But what I was trying to do was to embrace what the intention, Mr. Manville's motion, but broaden it because, as Councillor Nishioka pointed out and Councillor Nguyen pointed out, these aren't the only people struggling. And to me, $400,000 is something we can afford to do. We had voted to set aside $300,000 for our airport and new commercial service. That's not happening now. That's not happening. I mean, we're in the process. We're in the process of defederalizing it because no airline is coming, unfortunately. And that's not the City of Salem's fault. There's a lot of macroeconomic factors in play. But to me, we've been moving some money around, and this is one of the ways in which we're not taking on more and more expenses. To me, $400K is a very small price to pay to support our most vulnerable. And I think Mr. Manville very eloquently laid out how little money that is in the big scheme of our budget. Thank you.
As your chair, I'm going to bring this good conversation to a close and a vote. One last comment, Member Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Back to the motion, the amended motion from Councilor Member Nordyke. You mentioned about the vetting process. One of the things that I want to be sure that we do, if this does get to the place where we have a fund and we have staff people that are overlooking it, I do hope that we take in consideration that we don't want the folks who need this to have to go through 1,000 hurdles. Sure. Because they already are struggling. And when they see all of these barriers, they're like, no. And then we got to be able to reach them because a lot of them, English is not their first language. And so when they see all of these barriers, they see it as another system that they can get caught up in. And so whatever we do, I hope we can be sensitive to that, A. B, yes, the nonprofit folks can be a part of this conversation. Right behind them is the community of faith. Hello, somebody. Because the last time I checked, there's a whole lot of churches out here. They got millions in their bank account, but let's not go there. But you see what I'm saying? And so it has to be social services, yes. Community of faith, yes. We got to do all of that. I just don't want us to get to the vetting process where you have folks in need that feel like they got to show 10 pieces of identification before they get a check.
Thank you, Member Brown. All right, will the recorder please call the roll?
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Oh, sorry, Josh.
Could I ask a clarifying question?
From staff, yes.
So I just want to make sure people are understanding this would, it was never an actual separate fund from the general fund, so it's an allocation of the general fund. So the motion would be $400,000 annual allocation of the general fund dedicated to social services.
Correcting the point, it would be bringing a recommendation to the city council to consider it.
Correct, but not creating something different, something new, but returning to that practice.
Thank you.
I have a procedural question.
Yes, Mr. Dixon.
What happens to the original motion? Is
If
it
this,
dead?
if
Is
this
it gone?
motion passes, the original motion disappears.
If it
and we move
fails?
on. Yes.
If this motion fails?
If this motion fails, we go back to Member Manville's motion.
Thank you.
Will the recorder please call the roll?
Sorry. Member Belicheks.
Aye.
Member Allen.
Nay.
Member Nishioka.
Aye.
Member Cohen.
No.
Member Brown.
Aye.
Member Geyer.
Aye.
Member Manville.
Aye.
Member Murray.
No.
Vice Chair Vieira Brandel.
Yes, aye.
Member Dixon.
No.
Chair Tigan.
Aye.
Member Varney.
Aye.
Member Matthews.
Nay.
Member Nordyke.
Aye.
Member Gwen.
Nay.
Member Vang.
Aye.
Member Julie Hoy.
Nay.
Member Fuller.
Yes.
It passes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I still believe we have one other motion to consider this evening. Member Cohen, would you like to bring the motion shared with the group?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just say the motion and then get into it. I move that the City of Salem Budget Committee recommend to the Salem City Council adoption of a policy directing the city manager to include policy option packages and fiscal impact statements as standard components of the City of Salem's annual budget development process beginning in fiscal year 2028 unless able to do so sooner.
Motion on the floor?
Second.
A second by Gwen. Member Cohen, to your motion.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to thank Member Dixon. He's been an excellent thought partner on this. We've had many conversations about how to enhance budgeting for the city, and so just want to say thank you again. So I think most of you know, but I've worked for the state now for 7 years as a professional budget analyst. So these terms are state-centric, and so some of you might not understand it. And I think one of the things that has honestly bothered me about the Budget Committee since the day that I stepped foot in here is that it didn't mirror the state as closely as I wanted it to. For reference, our big book, it says workforce changes 1 FTE, if you're looking at that. And so that's one example of a place in which I think a good place for a policy option package would be. So what is a policy option package and how does it help out? As you can well read within the paper that I gave you. It provides clear policy choices from the different department heads, whether it be fire, police, utility, parks and rec, library, whomever it might be. Enhances transparency by laying out, library wants to add 5 staff, park wants to add 4 staff, fire chief wants to add 4 paramedics. So these are all different things that are coming up with different funds. And I think it gives this body here the opportunity to really see what evidence supports our decisions and how this facilitates long-term planning. Something that I wanted to bring up was an example, or 2 examples, was with the paramedics that City Council is going to consider on the 26th. I only really knew about it through an article in the paper, and it immediately brought a bunch of questions to my mind. Not that I want to hear the answers. I'm sure you can do a great job on the 26th. It's been postponed? Okay. Well, whenever it does come forward. Are those 4 positions, and once again, I don't expect answers right now, are those 4 positions just for the half calendar year because we're already into the fiscal year? What is the full roll-up cost? Does this require a new ambulance? What kind of other services and supplies are necessary? So what I'm trying to get at is this will be a more transparent way for us as a budget committee to see what the full price tag of a person, of an ambulance will be. And then to know that, we're only going to buy 1 ambulance for 1 fiscal year unless we're going to buy another one. So that then phases out. That 1 ambulance is a capital asset that phases out. What continues would be the ongoing maintenance, the fuel, the whatever else will be there. So you'll be able to see in our forecasting how these things layer up on top of each other, which I think is what was missing unless you do a really good deep dive into the financial summaries of the big book. And I think for most folks, because we have, let's be honest, we have lawyers, we have salmon biologists, we have nonprofit leaders here, we have realtors, and what I'm getting at is we're not professional budgeters except for Mr. Allen and myself. And so it allows us to know more emphatically what position the city is in, what of these costs are one-time in nature, like the donation to Marion Polk Food Share. Was that one-time in nature? Should it be phased out? Is it something that's going to be ongoing? And it will allow the community, stakeholders, all those people to really own the process and bring that forward to us in the budget committee and eventually to council to pass. So my expected outcomes would be increased public trust and civic engagement if the city is able, or if citizens within the city are able to see what some of the policy option packages are, then they can be supportive of them, or they can ask questions at your local neighborhood association meetings or just talking to your counselors. It enhances the reputation for fiscal responsibility, and it really does reduce the risk of budget shortfalls if we can see what the ongoing cost will be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years in the future, as opposed to something that is just 1 year out. I didn't want to push the budget team, so that's why I left it for 2028, which then allows them, because I'm sure they're like me in the state, knee-deep in phase-in, phase-out and inflation packages right now as they're building their budget to release to us in April. So I didn't want to impose on them something new that could hinder the process, but I would want to hear from city staff how they could manage this. And I do want this to be a discussion amongst all of us to see, along with what is in my motion, what other suggestions do you have, or do you love this book? Is this the best thing that we have here? This is because of the ethics that we have. We can only speak as a body here, and so sometimes we're going to have to understand that and be able to speak frankly about, this is what I want to see as we come into our April budget sessions because we only have 4 or 5 times together. And that's not a great time to say, you know, I really wanted to see this. Now is the time to do that. So that's why I wanted to bring this forward, and I'm open to any questions some might have.
Discussions on the motion. Member Dixon.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to comment on the elements of this that really were attractive to me. And I had been talking to Member Cohen about my concern about long-term costs. And knowing that there was funding available for a long-term commitment to carry that program forward. And what he's proposing, I think, would primarily address a new service or an expansion of a service, and it would allow us to get a better handle on how much of the problem it would address, why that can't be done with existing resources, and then what the financial impact would be, and also the impact on staffing. And so I am supportive of this motion. I think it allows this body and the public to analyze these long-term impacts and whether it could be done a different way, and why this proposal as opposed to any other way of doing it. So I am strongly in support of this.
Member Matthews.
So would the financial impact statement, would it kind of coincide with the 5-year forecast? Like, how far out would this financial impact statement move when they're assessing like the long-term cost?
Yes, Member Cohen.
Thank you, Chair. So within the state, we are biannually, so we do at least 2 bienniums, which is 4 years. But then we also have to just think about ongoing cost drivers, and so we would usually include that within our analysis. So my want would be for, especially if there's, so roll-up cost, right? So if you bring on somebody new halfway through the year, you're not paying for the full position because they're coming in halfway through the year. So the next year is when you'd see the full cost of that person. And so I'd want to see what the full cost of that person is the next year and the year after that.
Okay.
Member Gwynn.
I was just curious from Josh, how is this something that's easily implemented? What are your thoughts?
I think Krishna wants to comment.
Yeah, mine is a very quick comment, and Josh, then you can take it over after that. As I kind of look at how we are operating as a city, and we always talk about doing more with less, and there are many things that we should be doing differently. we can do better, and we know that as a staff. But at the end of the day, we have to look at how many FTEs do we have, what is the best way to use those FTEs to deliver the services. So that's kind of the game that we play every day, just to kind of, can we use those resources to the best possible way so that we can deliver that product. And I agree with all the points that have been made, but at the end of the day, everything comes with a cost. And if the goal is to do more with less, right now, with looking at the current resources, something like this is a significant amount of work for the staff. So it has to come with additional FTE that can kind of address a lot of these concerns that have been raised. So I just want to make a statement on that because I struggle with this, because there are a lot of things we could do differently, and I would like to, and I think we all want to as a city staff. But there are limited resources, and there are competing needs.
Thank you, Madam City Manager. Did you want to add anything, Josh, before we continue the discussion?
Yeah, just really quickly, this came across this morning. I haven't really had time to digest what it would look like. There are components or themes that I think could be accomplished fairly easily without this structure. But I think this structure and it could definitely require additional resources, additional staffing. But again, it's hard to understand the scope, the intent. At this point, it needs some more discussion.
Thank you, Josh. Other comments from the floor on the motion? Member Varney, then Manville Matthews.
Having been a state employee for decades, I remember every couple of years budget season coming up and the policy option packages and the fiscal impact and reading through, looking at the statements. I mean, my agency has a budget half of ours, and it took a couple of people 6 months, and then the budget analysts and a lot of people to put, I don't remember what it was, like maybe five policy option packages, maybe 3. So it is expensive and it does take a lot of time, but I appreciate the comments that we may be able to use a few of the principles to kind of help what we already have. But I just wanted to mention at this point, just the financial time and cost to our finance department. I would not support this. I mean, I'd like to see what a sample pop and a fiscal impact statement maybe look like compared to what I see for the state. But anyway, I'm just not supportive of it right now.
Thank you, Member Varney. Member Manville, and then Member Matthews.
Yeah, I'm just curious, having worked with the state POPs too, are there other peer cities that do use a process like this? And yeah.
Question for the maker of the motion.
Thank you, Chair. Are there other cities that use this? I don't know. But I will say that there are free forms, and I feel like I emailed one to Josh, that show you how to do a FIZ. They have it already chunked out, so it's pretty easy to plug in one person and then go to your HR comp source and put in whatever plumber level 2 or police sergeant, and it'll spit it out. So I don't know. I guess I'm a professional budgeter, and so I don't think it takes that much time. And with more complex POPs, like for the state of Oregon in Behavioral Health Division, if we're asking for $65 million to build new behavioral health housing, which we are and we're doing, that was a humongous POP. If it's just one FTE to do this, that should be less than 4 sentences. So it really depends on if you're going to build another police station or if you're going to add just one librarian. So there's going to be lots of range, and I think it's a mischaracterization to say that this will take up a lot of time and a lot of people.
Okay, thank you, Member Matthews, and then Member Allen.
CFO Eagleson, I'm assuming some version of this already happens. I'm not educated enough in this to know if this is the best process to be able to get to the spirit of what I like about this motion, which is how does a department currently justify what they're asking for? So whether it be, like in the example given, the 4 firefighters or 4 paramedics, what do they actually do? What do they show to be able to say this is what we need and this is why we need it, and how do we assess that already?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So we have a little different process than the state. Our process is actually dictated by the state and how we present the budget. So our comparable is to a POP is an enhancement request. So when we're going through the budget development process, for the general fund especially, we deliver a target. Basically, we calculate a target for the department budget. If they have a request or an enhancement outside of that target, they request an enhancement request, and it does include one-time costs, ongoing costs, and a description of what it'll do, what are performance measures, all those different pieces. Whether those pieces get included in the proposed budget is up to the city manager as part of the city manager proposed budget. So those enhancement requests don't make it here, because if they get included in the proposed budget, those costs are calculated, included in the annual budget process. That's why I was thinking we already have those pieces. They'd be easy to include if you're looking at an additional FTE, including in the ongoing one-time costs related to those program changes. That piece isn't a challenge, but opening up the entire budget process, isn't how the process is structured for cities.
Yes, Member Matthews.
So with that, and I guess this is kind of a question, I guess, for the body and for the motion maker, but is it practical to say for anything that was added to the city manager's proposed budget that those enhancement requests are provided along with it, since we already have them? Would that be practical, and then would that still get to the spirit of the motion if we were able to see that information?
I think the first question is to staff. Is it practical? Do those documents exist in a way that can be shared with the committee?
Some form of them, absolutely. So if you're looking for ongoing costs or calculated costs for program changes, those are something that's already baked into the annual budget. If you'd like to see more detail, that's certainly something that can be provided.
Yeah, and thank you, Chair. Yeah, the enhancement, it's pretty much what he said is what a POP is.
Okay. Member Allen?
Thank you. I think there's a lot of great ideas in the policy proposal. There's probably some things that would be helpful with regards to some of the information that they're getting with regards to enhancement ideas, especially when we're talking about out-year costs. So there's probably a lot of great things in here. I wouldn't support the motion in that staff's had 6 hours or 8 hours to digest it. So I don't know what the ramifications are for staff and whether or not this is really the overlay that would best suit the city and the budget committee. But I think there's some good ideas in here that should germinate for further discussion down the road.
Thank you, Member Allen. I'll just say, as chair, and some of us now pushing a decade of budget committee experience, I think there is a lot of both real world experience on our committee and also some really great budgeting experience, like professional budgeting experience, and also budget committee experience. Like, we're beginning to embody those things. We welcome our new member and also have a lot of familiar faces. And so if the result of this motion is that perhaps in the off season we have a work session and can share that kind of feedback with the staff, the thing that I have trouble with it is that it presupposes the right solution. And I think that there's probably a lot of good feedback we could give the staff on improving the process. But that's my take on it. Member Nordick, I see you also have a comment.
Right. I was just going to piggyback on what Member Allen said. I think, Member Cohen, there's a lot of great intention here with this document, but when I hear my city manager expressing concern about how much time it would take, I feel that maybe this is just the first step to a continuation of a conversation. So I won't be supporting it tonight, but that doesn't mean I don't support having more transparency and a deeper understanding of the true cost of the programs that we implement. I see this as hopefully opening the door to ongoing conversations about it. Thank you.
I'll leave for final comments. Member Manville?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the intent of this motion. I think it's critical. I think there's a lot of delegation to the staff, and we kind of are like, okay, you all are the pros. And in some ways, this motion feels like it's trying to give more power to this committee. And it seems to me like it would require more meetings, more time, and I'm happy to do that and talk a lot, as you all know. But I agree with the other commenters that additional work is needed on this before it's something I could support.
Member Matthews, then Member Nishioka.
I tend to agree with everyone here. I think the motion is great. I hope you bring it back. If it doesn't pass tonight, I hope you bring it back in a different form. I know I've seen that happen before with this committee where something was presented initially and then they met with staff afterwards to kind of have more of a, just be able to work with staff on what's practical for them that doesn't cost more staff time. And so, so I hope that if it doesn't pass tonight, that you do bring it back at a later budget meeting this year.
Member Nishioka.
Thank you. I too want to thank you for bringing it forward and helping us recognize that there might be opportunities that would help us understand the budget better or be able to get a long-term cost for something that we might be implementing. I do recognize the challenges that the staff would have. And so I believe that your motion has made it pretty clear to all of us and to the staff here that we would like to see better, clear explanations in long-term planning and costs. And hopefully that will happen without the details that are in your motion. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Member Nishioka. Member Hoy.
Thank you. First of all, I want to acknowledge and give my full respect to Member Dixon and to Member Cohen. You always bring great questions and have great insight and wisdom into these topics. And I don't want this to get lost or be stalled till April. I'm wondering if maybe you two can follow up with staff at some point and maybe go through your list and see where it might be matching up somehow or where it can be enhanced to bring us more of this kind of information. And what is the top priority? I'm all for more information. I need that to understand what's going on, and so I appreciate it. I do not want this to get lost. It's obvious you put a lot of time and effort into it, and it's incredibly valuable to the city. So I don't know if there's a question there. Can you guys follow up? I don't know who makes an appointment.
We'll certainly follow up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Hoy. I'll have the recorder call the roll. Thank you.
Member Matthews.
Nay.
Chair Tigan.
No.
Member Gwen.
Nay.
Member Julie Hoy.
Nay.
Vice Chair Vera Brandel.
Nay.
Member Manville.
No.
Member Fuller.
Nay.
Member Vang.
Nay.
Member Brown.
Nay.
Member Nordyke.
Nay.
Member Nishioka.
Nay.
Member Varney.
Nay.
Member Dixon.
Aye.
Member Murray.
No.
Member Geyer.
Nay.
Member Cohen.
Aye.
Member Belicheks.
Aye.
Member Allen.
Nay.
Motion fails.
Okay, thank you. We, just for a public announcement, we still have public comment. We have about 6 people or so signed up, but we're still at the point of the meeting. If there's any, I hesitate to ask, closing thoughts. We already have one member unplugging her equipment, so sometimes actions speak louder than words. I do want to just say, yeah. On behalf of the body as a whole and the city, I really want to appreciate everyone for the really in-depth and respectful conversations today. This bodes well for what we know to be a very interesting April coming up. I am going to shift us to public testimony for future budget issues. I will say just for the committee, your agendas noted both where we had received written testimony ahead of time, but I'm going to say that we'll move into spoken testimony now. Our final agenda item this evening is public testimony from those who have testimony for the committee on items not on our agenda or a future budget issue. I will call 2 names at a time, and just like our city council meetings, you'll have 3 minutes to comment. Please state your name and what ward or address you are from. You'll see your time displayed up front. When you get to 3 minutes, your mic will turn off and your time is done. We'll start with Bridget Losh and then Elise Strauss. And there you go, just turn that, hit that button to turn your green mic. There you go.
Good evening. My name is Bridget Loesch, and I am Ward 2. I'm here to state my full support for funding families who have been and will be affected, directly harmed by ICE operations in our community. Breadwinners have been taken. We're being told more will be. Families have been left behind with damaged or destroyed vehicles and lost belongings, tools for work, essential documents. People are in hiding. These are not abstract issues. These are real families in our city, absorbing real harm, often overnight, with little safety net. It's easy to speak about values and faith and public safety from a position of safety, but leadership is measured by what we do for people who do not have that safety. Most of us can walk freely through this city, drive around and go to sleep and wake up in the morning without fear of ourselves or our families being taken, but many cannot right now. If we claim to value human dignity and public health and safety, we must show it. Funding support for impacted families during a state of emergency is not charity. It's accountability, it's responsibility, it's harm reduction. It is possible. And it's the bare minimum of justice in this moment. Finally, I want to address appearances. Clean storefronts and hanging baskets may give the impression of a safe, healthy city. But as many people know, these things can try to hide real problems that residents of the city are suffering through. Stability is health and safety. Care is health and safety. And when the city chooses beautification over emergency support for families being harmed, that choice is not neutral. That's a moral decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Elise Strauss and Kelly Nielsen.
Hi, I'm Elise Strauss. I'm in Ward 8. And thank you for proposing your monies. I really appreciate that. But my overarching question is, what are we doing? What are we doing? I'm foreseeing many more city councils where we're going to talk about trying to claw money out for the Hispanic community, because some of you people have a real problem with the fact that brown people need help. ICE has killed 37 people since Trump took office, and ICE has beaten up and broken bones of thousands of others. I'm a human rights observer, and I have access to privileged information, and I can tell you that people in Salem have been brutalized, and they've been disappeared. And some of you shrug, some of you don't care, and I'm pissed that I have to stand up here and make you care. Usually when someone's grabbed by ICE, it's usually the primary breadwinner. So the family has money gone. They need money, they need rent money, they need a lawyer. They need groceries. And if they're lucky and ICE doesn't damage or total their car, because that has happened in Salem, they need a vehicle or they need their vehicle repaired. ICE usually leaves a vehicle in the middle of the road, so the car needs to be towed. Who pays for that? I've spoken to people who are terrified and traumatized and who can be there for them. Who can tell them, we've got you, we can help you. It should be us. It should be you. I'm asking you for $270,000 that your budget committee is telling you is there. And it has to be administered by mano a mano, or people who are in the trenches and know these people. And you're talking and talking and talking, and you're going to make it this bureaucratic fucking nightmare. It's not that hard. It's not that complicated. The blowback after Renee Good's shooting a week ago today, and tonight there's 2 more shootings in Minneapolis. ICE threw a flashbang into a car with 6 kids in it, and the kids are in the hospital. Most of us were shocked about Renee, and we should be. But especially us white people who never expected it to be us. Maybe we realize just a teeny tiny bit of the trauma that brown people have been facing since the dawn of colonialism. And if you haven't been moved by the 36 people ICE killed, or Renee, or any of the people in Salem that have been brutalized, then look at me. Renee Good was a human rights observer, and so am I. Renee was watching out for her neighbors, and so do I. They're coming after us too. So if you can't or won't be moved because brown people are being killed and beaten up, then I hope when ICE breaks my nose and breaks my arm, that you will think about the fact that I stood up here and I asked you for money to help brown people in our city.
Thank you, Elise. Kelly, Nielsen, and Kim. Kelly Nielsen. Thank you. Kim, Lori Doherty, and Peter Burgell. Peter?
I'm Peter Burgell. I live in Ward 2. There was a man walking down the beach after a big storm had thrown a whole bunch of starfish all over the beach. It was littered with starfish. There's a little girl down there, and she was picking up the starfish and throwing them back in the water so that they could survive. Guy came along and said, "You're wasting your time. You can't save all these starfish." He says, "Well, save that one, and that one, and that one." My point is, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And for that reason, I want to thank you all for having passed the motion that you did pass this evening. I want to thank Evan for bringing this subject up to us in the first place. I want to thank Linda for what she said about it. Especially want to thank Vanessa for bringing a compromise kind of situation that you could all support. And I want to thank Mickey for being the person who said this is a crisis and we can't wait until April to deal with this again. I want to thank you all and I want to thank Dr. Brown also for letting us really have a little bit of a window on what it's like for the people who are really suffering, as Elise was talking about. So I'm really glad you did that, and I'm really wanting you to realize that this crisis is happening today. It's not happening 4 months from now. It's not happening later on. It's happening today. It's happening every day. I'm also a human rights observer. I haven't had the experience that Elise has had. But by golly, we know that these things are happening daily. And you people have to take that into consideration. As far as the money is concerned, I'm put in mind of the fact that when we had the algae bloom up in the canyon, there was a lot of money suddenly became available because we decided, hey, this is an emergency. We got to do something about this. And all of a sudden, there were water stations everywhere. People were being taken care of. Well, this is an emergency too. You guys said so. I mean, the council said so. So something needs to be done. Those of you who are counselors and are going to be dealing with this again real soon, I hope you remember that. This is an emergency.
Thank you, Peter.
We've got to not just
Thank you, Peter.
later on sometime.
Are there any other additional members of the public who would like to offer testimony about a budget item or not on the agenda tonight? Please just state your name and ward for the record.
Yes, thank you very much. Kathleen Treppa, Ward 7, and boy, what a night. I had some prepared comments, not all of them are applicable. Thank you very much for the conversation about restoring some social service funding. I think it is absolutely critically important. I strongly urge the city to consider allocating funding, yes, for those who are impacted by ICE activities, primarily the Latin community. But I can tell you, and I can assure you, Mayor Hoy, there is a large percentage of this population that is not going to comply in advance, and we are not going to bend the knee to authoritarianism. That is not democracy. That is not patriotism. So I strongly believe that you need to provide support for the broader community, as you suggested, not just those directly impacted by ICE. That's critically important. But there are 15% of the Salem population lives below the poverty line. That's 27,000 people. And there are many more that don't earn enough to make ends meet. There are many people in this community that are one paycheck away from hitting the streets. And it is far more cost effective to help prevent homelessness. And the people that have been affected by ICE detentions, they're facing homelessness. They've got 15 families stacked up in a former church that is now the home to Mano a Mano, and not just those affected by ICE. Those are people who are headed for the streets, and they are sharing office space now. And it's just amazing what is happening out in the community. So I do think you need to restore the social service funding to the staff. Yes, it is a lift. It is a lift. And to your comments about accountability, you are regurgitating up an entire grant program. The contracts are in place, but you have to have staff to manage it, and you have to create a commission to help support it. But it absolutely is critically necessary for the benefit of this community. You cannot have a healthy, safe, and clean community if your residents, 27,000 plus, are struggling to make ends meet. They're one paycheck away. They need to be able to buy food, pay rent, pay utilities. All those things are getting more expensive. Health insurance, what happens with all the federal cuts? What happens if the subsidies for health insurance premiums don't pass? You have got thousands of people in this community that are struggling. And so social service funding, it's a small percentage of what the community needs, but you're investing in the community, and when you do that, you help prevent the need for additional public safety to intervene once they're out on the streets. It's the better way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.